There's a lot that comes with that, right? We know how we move out here. We can use our voices, whether publicly or internally, to try to deal with some of those things. And so that's just the way I've tried to approach it, right? I mean, Google can fire me tomorrow. That's not my family, right? But at the same time, while I'm there, it's got to go both ways, right? Like, you see me be honest as I can. I'm a Web3 skeptic. Google's putting out Web3 products. Those two things can exist at the same time. And yes, I try to go about them respectfully. And if I can't do that anymore, then just like everybody else in this room, you can choose to be somewhere else. So I kind of look at it as this, mutually beneficial relationship. And yes, if something ever crossed that line, then I feel like I have the courage to make the right decision when the time comes. I'm going to be fair to the other speakers. I'm going to jump to someone else. Thank you, Justin, for those questions. Byron, if you'll unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and shoot your question.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you, and appreciate. First off, shout out to Justin for trying to make sure that I was able to get my question asked. Super huge congratulations to you, Kelsey. I've been following you for a while, and just seeing another Black man in the space just excelling in your position, and also just being a leader in the community has honestly been it's super dope to see. But as far as my question, so you touched upon this a bit in a couple of the questions, but I want to ask something super specific. So you mentioned the more senior that you become, the more that you step away from the keyboard. How do you balance your wanting to lead along with your love for being hands-on with technology? I think I'm 7 or so years into my career, and it's a struggle. Currently I'm a team lead, and I find trying to focus on both the leadership along with wanting to dive deep into the technical aspects of our tech stack. It just seems really, really difficult. So curious to take your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a woman named Camille, and she wrote a really good book about the manager's path. And I think she's a super technical person. The first time I was aware of her, I was watching her talk about distributed systems on a YouTube video or something like that. But she's also a legit manager and technical leader. And there's a lot that comes with that. And I think for me, if that's the job you have, then that is the trade-off you're making. It's supposed to be hard, because you're supposed to be a manager, and not all managers will have the luxury of diving deep into the details, right? But ideally, there's a lot of things that have drawn you into management, and it's okay to let go and go in that direction if that's what you really like. Because, like I said, focus is about saying no to good opportunities too, right? It should be hard. So that's how I know you're probably thinking about this the right way. You're probably making the right decision, trade-offs included. So I think that's okay. But for me, when that pressure came, I decided to let go of one or the other. And so to stay on the technical track, and when I say moving from the keyboard, I remember when Go got released before I joined Google. And I learned about Golang by watching the people who created it give a talk. I didn't look at their code first. I listened to them first. And they were not necessarily behind the keyboard when they were doing it. And so leadership sometimes requires you to back away from the keyboard and maybe pick up a microphone or write a blog post. You have to now convince people why that technology to exist. If you want to build a community around that technology, it's even harder. And typically that means you have to be where the people are. And a lot of these things happen when you're away from the keyboard. Now, what happens when you don't understand that part? If you just want to sit behind the keyboard and nothing else, right? Then people will tell you what to do, right? You don't want to go to the engineering meeting where people are deciding what to build, then you will build what they decide. If you don't want to go to the thing where we teach support how this thing should work, then you're just going to be responding to tickets all the time. If you don't want to necessarily be the person that works around the clock, then you better teach other people how to do the job as well. And so a lot of times I think people end up playing hero ball and they're going to be permanently stuck in the Superman suit. That's just not the career that I wanted. So to me, it's a balance. And honestly, I was so glad to spend some time in developer relations. The nice thing about developer relations in general, most people have an element of developer relations in their job and they just don't know it. If you think about it, let's say you're a platform engineer or whatever y'all want to call it, and your team is responsible for building the CI/CD system. And so you go and buy whatever, Jenkins, Azure DevOps, it just doesn't matter. You buy it. And you get it all set up. You step back and it's like, yo, we bought the thing, we installed the thing, and no one's using it. You now have a problem. Now, you could use your keyboard and, I don't know, upgrade it to the latest version and hope they come. It don't work like that. You got to communicate. You got to go and show people what it is. So you could craft an email. We just bought Azure DevOps and you should use it. That's not going to go very far. You might actually have to show them what they can do with it. And a lot of times that becomes an element of your job. And so I think when we think about, kind of being on that journey about technical, what you have to realize is that anybody that's going to be a sound engineer knows why they're building what they're building. They know when to not even break out the keyboard to begin with. So the best engineers I've ever seen and I've strived to become are the people who say, now that I understand what you're trying to do, there is nothing to build. Please go download Engine X. It already does that. That's important, and that's a real skill. So don't be upset that you may have gotten a lot of those skills and now it's your time to leave. And honestly, maybe that's just what you're doing for this season. You might decide, you know what, I'm going to go to an IC role next time and focus on those skills. So maybe, and it's up to you, everybody's path is different. Maybe you say, hey, maybe I stop putting that much pressure on myself and double down on this management thing and see how far that goes. And when the time comes, I can make the switch again. Thank you for that question, man. Next, I'm going to give it to, I believe it's Kat. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hi. You mentioned earlier about your manager going into your pattern, correct? What were some of the things that you did, as an IC to sort of like foster that relationship, both during like the good times and the hard times, and just to make sure that your career moved in the direction that you wanted?
One thing I learned as a manager myself, I just wish people would tell me what they needed me to do. Not in a mean way, not in an asshole way, but just let me know what you care about. When we're in those one-on-ones, people would just come to the one-on-one, sit down, go to the motions, and then go back to their desk. Why'd you do the one-on-one? I want to learn about you. I want to know what you care about. I want to know what your goals are. I want to know what's important to you. And I get it. Most managers don't create that lane, so I get why people don't do it. But when I was a manager, I tried to proactively find opportunities to be that person, to create that lane for people. There's a saying or a phrase people say, managing up, make sure you do it with respect because I don't want you to get fired from your job. And, Kelsey said, that's not how that really works. But you got to make sure your manager kind of know what you're looking for. And so when I joined Google, there was a couple of people, Julie Pearl, Greg Wilson, and we were at this dinner, and I told them, I actually had accepted a job at NASA. I was going to go work at NASA and run some of the platform teams there working on the Mars mission. And they asked me to come to dinner. I go to San Francisco, and we're at this dinner. I was like, listen, I do not want to become employee 100,050 at Google. Y'all put me in a box. I disappear from Twitter. I disappear from GitHub, all so I can say I work at Google. That's not what I want. Maybe some people want that. I can't do that. I've done too much in the game to make that my next step because I already had my roadmap kind of mapped out. And they were just like, we're not going to do that. I was like, bitch, y'all be doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all be doing that to people. I don't know if they do it to themselves, but I see it happen too much. And so I was really particular on the way in about I am more than what y'all see on social media. I am more than this person that's writing and contributing code to Kubernetes. I am more than the author of that Kubernetes book. Y'all got to make sure you understand and see that. And I don't know, big tech companies, y'all just like to say this role, that role. And that wasn't what I was aspiring to. And it's so funny, they were just looking at me like, we're not going to do that. But also, Greg, once I joined, he helped me understand the responsibility that comes with that. If you want all that flexibility, you want all that freedom, now it's on you to justify why you made those moves. And so it really quickly became a partner. So once I joined Google, he kind of carved up the lanes. He gave me space. And look, luckily I joined Google after having, 13 years of industry experience as a leader myself, as an individual contributor, and all the roles in between. And so when I saw him create that lane, I said, oh, I see this. I see the lane. I already know where to go with it. I know what he needs, but I also know what he ain't asking for. And so when I would try to make these bets, I would tell him, hey, here's my strategy. I know I'm about to swim outside this lane, but you got to trust me. And so how did I earn that trust? Well, when your manager go to a leadership meeting and another leader from a different department is like, yo, I really like what you got people over there doing on your squad. That stuff Kelsey been doing lately, genius. And then our next one-on-one, he was like, hey, I got a little feedback to share with you. You're a little nervous because you're trying to figure out, did you swim too far out your lane? But then, I think Google does a good job. We have this G-Thank system where he can approve feedback from other people in the org. There's a little monetary attachment, but it doesn't outweigh the gratitude that people express to you. And he just felt good approving those things. And it was a nice feedback loop. And there's that saying, you want to make your manager look good. You notice one thing I'm not saying. I'm not saying my boss. That whole boss thing, we're not working in the field. That's not what's happening. These folks are your manager. They're trying to manage your work or manage or help you achieve the goals that you want to get to. And so since I have that mentality, I got real comfortable asking for certain things. And I'll give you one more nugget here. I remember I got a really good rating. But I also remember that I didn't really provide all the notes necessary to kind of get that rating. Look, he was probably fully aware of the work, but I kind of felt there wasn't enough feedback to go with that rating. I was actually looking for more, tweaks. I was looking for a little more nuance. Me and him had such a good relationship that I figured out over the years how to take negative criticism from him because I know he meant well. One time he gave me some negative criticism, and I wasn't happy with it. And I remember in this case, I was wrong. And then, I can come back and say, look, my emotions got the best of me. I'm glad you gave it to me. Please keep doing it. One time he was wrong. And the next day he said, I should have never gave you that feedback because it's not necessarily distracting or actually helpful in that case. So we had that relationship. And so when I had that feedback round, it was like, just keep doing what you're doing. I was like, yo, man, I expected more. Like, we need more. And I remember him telling me, he was like, I can't give you more. We peers now, it's time for you to kind of necessarily move on. Not that you got to leave me, but you got to expand your leadership. You got to expand your scope so that you can keep growing because I partner with you as far as we can go. And I was like, yo, I'm so glad I had that same manager for 6 years because it gave me enough to do what I'm doing now. So I appreciate that question. Hopefully I answered it. All right, next speaker. I don't know. I see John in the name. Sorry if I can't pronounce the first part of it. If you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question. That's not working. So I'm going to bring Nitya to the stage. If you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask the question.
Hi, I hope I'm doing this right. Hi, Kelsey. First of all, congratulations. This is amazing. I'm Nitya, and I wanted to actually ask you about conflict. The higher you go, the more people see you, and the more likely you are to have every word you say being weighed and measured. And I was wondering, one of the things that really impresses me about every kind of conversation I see you in is how thoughtful, considerate, and very level-headed you are in responses. And I was wondering, how do you manage conflict, and has that changed the higher up you go?
Yeah, it changes because I remember I said something about a competitor actually in a positive light. And, that competitor, look, if you're a team working on an internal tool that competes with the tool that I'm now talking about publicly, it kind of feels like, what team are you on? You know what I mean? Like, you should be spending those words talking about our product and solution. And so I remember this happened one time, and, after a few promotions, I think I was at a director level at that time, and, outside people would say, wow, you got the director of XYZ at Google saying nice things. What does he really think about their internal products? And I remember I was like, what are you talking about? One of my slogans is like, different companies, same team. A lot of times we work together and we move around and we continue to work together, especially when these projects are backed by open source. And I remember getting an email, someone, was not happy with that. I won't mention any names. And, that was a very interesting discussion. But I remember there was a VP, Sam Ramji, that saw that email and said, hey, I believe it was respectful. It was honest. And that's the value that Kelsey brings to the table. And we don't want to dilute that. And so there was a lot of conflict there. And maybe I didn't resolve that with myself. But whenever someone asked me a question about why did I say what I said, I'm willing to kind of stand on it, back it up, or stand down because maybe it wasn't the right thing to say. But I do put thought into these things. I do try to put my hands on these things and see if they're worthy of criticism or praise. And I think trying to approach things from that angle, having an opinion about anything these days will create conflict. There's no way unless you just want to be quiet. And honestly, quiet is an answer too. So being silent on some things will create conflict. So I don't know if you can ever avoid it, but I try to just approach things with empathy, honesty, and transparency. And if I do those things, it never makes someone happy every time, but at least it gives me the peace of mind that, look, I'm just not, shit posting all day. And that's the thing you can do as well. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just not the tool I've used. And I've seen it in public, and I try to call it out when it happens. When I have a disagreement on Twitter, and I try to be super polite, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And very rarely will someone fall back and say, you know what, I was just nitpicking. I was just creating a somewhat semi-hostile situation. I'll stop doing that now because I think I see your point if I'm willing to put that nuance to rest. And so patience is the other answer there. Thanks for that question. Hopefully I answered it. We're going to move on to the next speaker, New Hustle, or the New. If you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelsey. And honestly, man, this is like I literally got the hair standing on the back of my neck. It was like talking to you. I think it's awesome just you making an L9, which I don't know what that is, but I think it's just awesome just having someone, just another brother in the game, just man to man, brother to brother, father to father, that is just like killing it. And I just want to let you know that you are like an inspiration, a silent mentor to me. If you don't know it, I just follow your Twitter and your blogs and just kind of read up everything that you have. One of the questions that has kind of been like plaguing me a little bit, I'm a new father, and of course I'm still progressing in my career. And I just want to know, how do you like balance it all and like still killing it at the same time? I have two kids. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and my son is, he's 3. So you kind of got toddlers running around, and then of course you're married, and you're still trying to do all of those things and still kill it. And I'm just trying to figure out the sauce.
Man, I love that, man. That's deep. And for anyone listening on this call, while he looks to me as someone that looks like him and he can take inspiration for that, all of y'all are probably doing the same for somebody else that looks like you. And look, I get it. It shouldn't matter what people look like. It shouldn't matter all of these things, but we need to see positive examples of where we're trying to go. And so I'm honored to be able to do that for you. So I appreciate that feedback. In terms of balance, man, I remember going to Europe for the first time, and someone introduced me to their spouse and introduced me to them as their partner. And I was like, partner? What's that? That is something different? Am I missing something? I grew up in the South in terms of when I got married, and it's like, that's just my wife. And it's like, well, that word works, but, we interact with each other from a partnership level. And when I started to really think through what that means number one, I don't know about you, but my child, I have a daughter, she's 15 now, but you get inspiration for them. You know, you might have a hard day at work, you log off, you go play with them, you know, they give you an excuse to watch all the Pixar movies. And you might watch that Pixar movie and get that little bit of inspiration, or they give you an opportunity to go into their world. Because sometimes as we get older, our world gets a little narrow. Work, Netflix, work, Netflix, sleep. That's it. It's unfortunate, but I think kids give us that lane back, and they open back what it's like to be a new person in the world. All of their new experiences become ones you either get to relive again, or also new experiences, and they become shared experiences. I drew so much inspiration from them, and guess what? Your career is more than the dearer tickets they assign you. Your career is going to get much better when you start to get these outside influences, like spending time with your children. So it's not just coming in and perform a task.
How are you doing?
Your job is also to grow and improve as a technologist, as a human.
I'm listening to Kelsey Hightower from Google. He's like one of the Kubernetes.
I learned a lot from my child. That was the first
pretty
time
much
I really
one of the top figures in Kubernetes.
To be happy for somebody else being successful. It's a hard thing to do, watching somebody else shine and being happy for it, because it's hard to resist the urge to ask, why am I not shining right now the way they shine? It's hard. But when you have a kid, at least in my experience, when your child do something, you feel like it's an extension of yourself. And you start to learn how to be happy for other people, regardless of what's going on in your situation. And I remember I got really good at just talking to my wife about my career, talking to my wife about her career, trying to learn from her as well. You know, my wife has done a lot more management than I have. And so as my partner in crime, I would ask and listen to her advice. I would say, could you critique my talk? Could you watch it and give me some feedback? I'm about to craft this email. Tell me what you think, and then respect that opinion. And I think just acknowledging that earlier I gave that example about me needing to board a flight, but it was my turn to stay home with a sick child, and saying no to that. That's balance. Balance comes with those actions. And just having conversations about where you're at. I remember I was sitting with her mom one time, and she was like, you know, every mother-in-law likes to give you some marital advice. And some of the best advice she gave me was, it ain't going to be 50-50 all the time. Sometimes you're going to have to give 80% while they can only give 20%. Maybe they got some stuff going on, and you're going to have to step up. And so that means for me, washing the clothes. You got meetings, I'm working from home. I can take meetings while folding clothes. Plus, I like to fold the towels a certain way. I like my towels triple folded like Macy's, you know what I mean? And so you can start to bring that to the table. And so for me, balance was like never missing the opportunity to be helpful, right? If I'm out in the store, you just text your spouse, text your wife, text your partner. Can I get you anything from the grocery store? I know you got a lot going on, especially if you kind of low on time because you grinding normally. Those times where you're not, be present. Be present. So when your spouse says, hey, I need you to go with me to a friend's house, you ain't really feeling game night right now. You're not really feeling playing Uno with people that don't know the rules. But you go anyway, and you be present. You don't think about the job. You got to put that on the back burner. So I think a lot of times being balanced means being present. It may not be 50-50 all the time, but if you're going to put the time in, try to make the best of it. And so that's just my lived experience. That's the way I tend to approach this topic. And then it feels like it's just another part of my life because I stopped ignoring it.
Wow, and I just, man, that's just thank you. I mean, just, you know, for that nugget. And I guess as far as like a follow-up there, Kelsey, I'm just wondering, you know, with this, you know, fine balance, and of course I know that you're always like refining that and having a balanced life. So what's, since you got the L9 now, or you have reached that level, what's over the hill and around the corner for you?
Remember, I got my map.
Yeah.
We just walking now, right? There ain't no end game to this.
Facts.
And that's the thing that makes me feel good about it. And honestly, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I got it, and I wasn't even happy. Right? It's the effort that makes me happy. It's not really getting it. All of my awards and trophies, I don't have them anymore. They're gone. That's not really why I'm doing it. And honestly, I had to sit back for a second and say, why am I not over the moon about getting this L9? What's going on? Am I being ungrateful? Why am I feeling this way? And I had to step back for a moment because this happened a couple of days ago, actually. I had to check myself and say, look, you put in the work. And honestly, the L9 ain't just for me, though. The reason why I decided to tweak this one and not the L6 and not the L7 and not the L8, but I chose to tweak the L9 because I know there's people who contributed to this. Those people are celebrating it because they know how much they put into the partnership. They know how much we've done together. And so I figured this ain't just for me, right? My daughter, she go to school, she's taking computer science now. And it's cool for her to see that her dad got a Wikipedia page. Now there can be an update to the Wikipedia page. As a child that's gonna be like, I'm gonna be like Kelsey, a distinguished engineer. And I get to remind that dude, like, yo, the thing that makes you special is the thing that makes us different.
I'm fixing the headings. I made the section scrollable.
I said, you know what, let me give myself
see a
permission
mirror.
to be happy. It's cool, I can be happy about the L9. I can look at someone that says titles don't matter because in large portions they're right. But what matters is all the work that went into it.
There are a couple of like polished points that I need to tackle.
I wanted to honor.
And I'm also merging in some work from Tijan to wrap this up. Should make these things a little easier to navigate.
So there's a lot that goes into it. What Jay-Z said, I'm doing it for the culture. And there's a lot that goes into it. It means a lot. And so that's the perspective that I had to put on it because I was real close to pretending that it didn't matter when it really did. Thank you for that question. I'm gonna swing it to having a hard time keeping track. So Lewis, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Sorry, I think it's my turn. The audio cut out a little bit.
Yep, it's on you.
Mr. Hightower, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Louis Myers. I am a transitioning veteran from 11 Bravo to developer relations, and there's a whole story behind it, but we're not here for that. I've just been listening, and I wasn't going to say nothing the whole time, but man, that's crazy to hear what you said, what you just contributed to the space.
Of course, I use storybooks. You make them so easy to use now.
I find myself in this, how do I say it? This predicament, this limbo, this purgatory, as I'm looking to secure my first position in tech, because this started for me September 16th of 2021. After I got my 100th rejection from Walmart. And, then I broke down to my wife to cry because I felt like less of a man, less of a human. And this has been an ongoing battle for like a year and 2 years prior to anyway. And then going to enroll into a boot camp and then having to do that with my youngest kind of pulling up my coattails, so to speak, while I'm trying to learn this. And then it was a million and one things, but to someone I love to hear what you say, it gives me hope. And there's a question, don't worry. I don't know, it brings tears to my eyes, to be completely honest, because a very close friend of mine mentioned your name to me, and I'm like, who's Kelsey Hightower? I'm just now thinking about a boot camp at this time. It's like, Kelsey Hightower, my brother makes a lot of money, he gets to talk to Kelsey Hightower at Google, like, what is that? And then I looked you up, I'm like, this is insane. But that's dope, and now I get to ask you a question. So let me not waste time. My question to you is, as I break into developer relations to kind of basically do the job before I do the job, I've never written a blog before, but I wrote a blog, and that's what got me my second round interview. I've never thought that I could take my love for people and tech and put it together and find it in developer relations. And you mentioned that you have experience in developer relations, and you hit on it a little bit. I'm currently a career coach and career coach, and I identify as a developer advocate. When you were working, I don't know if this was something that you kind of dealt with, but were there moments where you're like, okay, I'm trying to get this job, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to secure the bag, so to speak, but I still got to be a decent father, a decent husband. when did you know, like, okay, I know the job is going to be there. I know applications are going to be there. When did you know that, okay, I can just turn it off for now? Let me focus on that, because to be completely fair, to be completely transparent, I have big issues doing that. Like I'm just recovering from a cold. Yesterday I could do nothing. I bring my son home from school just to fall asleep behind him after I give him his food because I couldn't stay awake. And I wake up to feel extremely horrible. Like, I can't believe I didn't finish my technical blog. No one's going to see me. I didn't put any applications in. I'm unhappy now because I'm sick and I'm not feeling it. My son is happy, and I'm going to take him across the street to get some ice cream. But I'm tired of not feeling like I'm not doing enough for him.
Yeah.
And everyone tells me I am, but
I do them like
father,
this. I don't know what it's called, ruffle or something.
My paycheck goes directly to the rent, and I'm proud of it because now I feel like I'm helping my wife. Because she works at home. She's just like your wife, does a little bit more managerial duties, so does my wife. And so I want to be able to contribute more, and I want to be able to relieve her.
This one.
And she reminds me at times it's not about the money, it's about your presence, your ability to be here now. And I have a lot of problems sometimes doing that because I guess it's the FOMO. You know, did I miss this opportunity? Did I not put in, till 12 in the morning studying and, not only becoming a developer advocate, but walking the walk and talking the talk? Did I build a project? Did I contribute? So that's my question to you in the midst of that. How did you know if you had that same discrepancy? Let me turn it off and be present for the family. I know I'm gonna get this job, but let me turn it off now because I might miss this moment.
I think when we stop thinking about it like a light switch, it becomes easier. Life is life. It just is what it is. I know society works real hard to create these buckets for us. I know the world works real hard to say this is work and this is play. The world works real hard at that because that's all they understand generically. But the thing that's dope, man, is that you understand that there is an opportunity and there's a responsibility for you to go after it. But remember, I remember seeing this really cool tweet. It went viral. And it says, all these men out here thinking that they protecting their family by, arming themselves to the teeth just in case a rogue militia comes to their doorstep. That's probably not going to happen. If you want to protect your family, learn how to wash the dishes. If you want to protect your family, learn how to wash clothes. If you want to protect your family, be that example you wish you had. When they see dad is there and being present, when dad takes a moment to say, you know what? I appreciate you getting your room cleaned without me having to ask twice. And they look at you awkwardly and be like, is that big of a deal? It's like, it is. I want to let you know that I see you not only when you're doing something wrong, but I want to let you know that I see you when you're doing something right. I'm not going to take your existence for granted. But remember what I was saying earlier, it ain't going to always be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be 80-20. But you got to make sure that you understand that all of this stuff is important. Taking care of your children, this ain't daycare. This is your family. These are humans, right? And so when you are able to be there and then maybe she's able to work or, maybe she's able to be there and you can get back on your grind, make sure you're communicating, right? Because, I get it. If I was, in a relationship and we had agreed that we're all going to contribute to the best of our abilities and you watching a little too much Netflix, we might have to have a conversation about people stepping up and doing what's expected of them. And so I think as long as you can continue to communicate, as long as you can continue to demonstrate that you own your grind, what's the outcome? And so the reason why I think I was so excited about those IT certifications, look, I get they don't mean a lot to some people, but they meant a lot to me. And when I would get one, I would come home and I would just show my partner, show my wife and say, hey, I've made another step in the right direction. You see this right here? What does this mean? Oh, it means the work I was putting in is this. And I remember when I used to job hop quite a bit, I used to start off and look, after, having my own computer company and getting back into the game around the time my daughter was born. And when my daughter was born, I knew then that, it's not about running your own business. That's not the end game. The end game is doing something valuable in the world. And if that's by running your own business, then you do it that way. If it's by doing something else, then you do it that way. And I remember I got an overnight job as a person that worked in the Knox. So it's like you're looking at these data screens. If anything goes wrong, you would call out to someone. I didn't even have the skills to do anything about it. I was just sitting there looking at the screen and paging out to someone and telling them what was wrong. And then maybe I could level up a little bit. But I did that job because the best contribution I could make at that time was to make sure that my partner at the time still been married 17 years. She knew that she didn't have to disrupt her work schedule, right? She already put in 9 months carrying our daughter. I can do some kind of sacrifice. So the sacrifice I made by paying attention was I need to change the work schedule. I need to be able to get home and be home during normal hours so that we couldn't really afford daycare like that, if I'm being transparent. And so I was like, look, here's what I'll do. I'll get an overnight job. I'll get home. And we just got to do the handoff. And then you get home, I can get a nap in. Boy, when babies take a nap, it's like joy. When you have a newborn and they sleep for you, oh my God, you be looking at that crib like, I know you love me because you sleep. And when they stop sleeping, you like, what did I do to you? And so when they sleep, you sleep. And so that's how I did it. When she slept, I slept. Because at that moment, that was the most important thing I needed to be doing. Now, look, when I got to the job, don't be wasting time. Look, I was staring at a screen all night long, and the majority of the time, nothing happened. You know what I was doing? I was at Barnes & Noble getting the next book. I was writing little shell scripts on my little personal laptop. I was just getting them skills, man. And then at that moment, I knew the most important thing wasn't the one job you had at the moment. It was just that little piece of you knowing that you got the next step in the game. That's it. No one can tell you all the time. Sometimes you're not going to have a manager to tell you that you're on the right path. But I remember the first time I wrote this for loop, and I think that was a technical moment. When I wrote my first bash script that had a for loop in it, I understood how it worked. And I was just in my chair like, yo, I understand what the hell is going on. And so then I was like, I'm going to do this job for now, because that's my best contribution I can do for the fam. But then I'm going to keep looking, because when the situation changed, then I can do something else. And that's exactly what I did. When we got to the point where daycare was an option, we did that move. And then I was able to just get a different job, again, that had the right work balance in terms of getting off on time, things like that. We used to share a car, so we just had to make it work. I caught the train, she had the car, and that's how we did it. But you know what? One thing I did was, look, it's okay to feel like you're not all the way where you're supposed to be. But damn, this game is hard enough, man. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's already hard. Don't make it harder if you can help it. I get it. There's reasons why we feel like this. So I'm not no psychiatrist. But I would say take that emotion, take all of that right there and put it into the grind, right? When you get that for loop working, I want you to take a moment and smile with it. Don't let it just pass as if everybody else know how to do it, so it don't matter. It's the fact that you know how to do it, and now you can take that and accumulate them skills. And look, man, someone had to preach it to me. The money gonna be there. That's what money does. It circulates and it pays people for what they do. That's what it does. That's how that works. Eventually, it will be your turn. You just gotta believe that part, man, because if you don't, you're gonna have a hard time convincing someone else that should happen for you. Thank you for that question, man. I'm gonna move on to the next speaker. Hopefully I was able to answer it for you, man. But look at this room that you're in. A lot of these folks is gonna be there for you in your tech journey. When you go to the meetups, it's people like this that's gonna be in that meetup. It ain't just Kelsey. It's gonna be a whole group of folks out here that got the same struggle. They understand where you're coming from. They understand the patience required. So just understand that whether it's the outside community helping or the family that you have, y'all in this together, and just make sure you respect that, and you'll get through it, man, and we're going to be here too. All right, with that, we'll move to the next speaker.
I didn't come here to cry. I'm just saying, I just want to say thank you. I didn't come here to cry. I didn't expect that. So I just really appreciate it. I just didn't expect that. And it's different. You know, you hear it 1,000,001 times, and you hear it from somebody you never thought you'd ever had an opportunity to speak to, and all of a sudden your whole thought process changed. It's like you can hear mine in the background right now. It's crazy. So the appreciation to all over 300 of you to you, Mr. Hightower, the highest praise. Thank you. Congratulations on L9. I know the significance of that and the transparency that you shared with the realness behind. I don't even think I'm happy about it. I've had to learn very, very quickly. It's all about the journey, and you embodied that in a very, very meaningful way. So thank you to everybody else in the room. Hey, I appreciate the support, and I can't wait for y'all to see me at the top because I'm gonna bring y'all with me.
And look, and in between time, my DMs is open. I don't always respond the fastest, but I do respond. And so you ain't gotta wait for no special moment. But we here, DMs is open. You hit me, and I promise that I'll try to get around and respond. If I don't do it the first time, try it again. Okay?
Much appreciated, sir. Much appreciated.
All right, I'm gonna move this one to, I think it's Yusaf. Yusaf, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Line. I just want to say thank you. You have been an inspiration for me since I was in high school, and I wouldn't be here today where I am right now in my career, or what I know and what I am confident with. I just want to say a big heartfelt thanks. I just wanted some opinion regarding some issues that I face on a day-to-day basis in my current organization. So I am the sole developer. I work remotely and I work overseas. So currently I live in India. I work for a company in Germany. And so the issue is that since the day one I have been involved with the company, I have developed an entire tech stack for the company's infrastructure, including code, its infrastructure, built pipelines. I have built product which I'm proud of, but from time to time, I face issues with my manager. He's my CEO, so he's the CEO of the company, and there are always requests which become conflicts with what I have learned over the years, what I have learned with reading books, SRE principles. And sometimes they are in direct conflict with what should be done. And it becomes hard to pick a side to what should I do next, whether I should go with what should be done technically at that point, or should I just listen and go with the flow with what my CEO wants me to do. So so that micromanagement from a person who is not technical but is controlling an aspect of technology which is entirely technical becomes really hard and sometimes frustrating for me. And especially when you are working remotely, you are the sole developer for the most part. You are the sole developer handling the entire infrastructure. It becomes quite frustrating to decide. So I just wanted your opinion on that.
And keep in mind, this is just my opinion, just like your CEO has their opinion, and you got yours, and the book you're reading has theirs. These are all opinions. And one thing that it took me probably about year number 8 in my career to really understand, 2 things. I don't know about y'all, but you're always interviewing. I'm not saying you got to go take a job interview every day, but you should always have kind of a line of sight to a better situation. And you might be in the best situation. So again, be present, respect the opportunity you have in front of you. But I do think we all owe it to ourselves as individuals that don't own these companies to make sure we understand that the market is fairly big. I know it's different for some of us, so let me not make too many assumptions here. But just exercise knowing that there's other situations available. Keep your eyes open. Make sure you keep a healthy network, because when the pressure is overbearing, it's really nice to know there's a different thing you could be doing instead. But let's just talk about your current situation. Like the way you described it, one thing it took me a long time to realize is that two-way decisions, right? And some things are not actually permanent, especially when we're talking about software. Most of the time, we're talking about configurations. And look, I used to be that person that'd be like, man, we're doing everything with Jenkins. If it's not Jenkins, we're not using it. And then people be like, why do you care about Jenkins so much? There's other ways of accomplishing this. We can use a different tool. I can use a shell script. I'm like, no, it's got to be Jenkins. We started with Jenkins. Like, dude, we ain't even saying that yet. Why are you saying Jenkins right now? And so sometimes I think we get overcommitted on a particular tech stack or way of doing it. Sometimes we build up muscle memory that we learned from a long time ago. And every time something come up, someone like, oh, no, we're going to do it like this. It's like, no, nobody do that no more. That's not a thing, right? And so what I've learned is, you know what? My job is not to be right. Not always. Especially being right at the wrong time is no good. It creates animosity. It can cause a distraction. And so my goal has always been is just to make sure I was a professional and I was ready. So let's just take a simple example. And it may not be your example, but hopefully it's enough to kind of get things across. The team is using bash scripts to manage infrastructure in the cloud. And, you know, you're new to the game or you've been around a little while and it's like, yo, Terraform or Cloud Foundation is the best practice. That's what all the people are doing. Look, there's a whole book on it. And so the person doing the scripts is like, dog, we good on Terraform. Our scripts work well enough. And you're like, dude, I can see that this is wrong. Like we are literally working around so many issues that can easily be solved by just using Terraform. And you got a couple of options. You can go back and forth with this person forever, and then that be the source of your stress, or you say, you know what? I'm gonna use the shell scripts because there's some more important stuff that needs to be done at this organization. You wanna do it all in bash? We're gonna do it in bash. That is totally fine. I'm good with it. You know what? I've been meaning to brush up on my bash skills anyway. And so let me dig in. I'm gonna learn it this way. Now, I'm about to tell you something that's not fair. Sometimes you gotta do double the work to move things to a different situation. For example, I might say, you know what? This person ain't ready for Terraform right now. They're not ready for it. I think it's the right thing to do. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna define the time, and look, I get it, it's not fair. Sometimes I have to learn these skills off the clock. Sometimes in between different tasks, I might start converting some of those bash scripts into Terraform. Now remember, I'm fully aware that they still may tell me no, even if I get the Terraform working. Right? They still can say, I told you we are not going to do that, and I get it. But see, I want to be ready, right? Well, how does the phrase go? You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So I'm going to go in and start the Terraform. I'm going to start breaking down that bash script because usually there's a reason why they're using the bash script, right? Let's not, just because you read it somewhere or someone else calls it a best practice, sometimes a best practice is not more important than practicing itself. And so maybe that team has a lot of practice and they chose to use bash and they just can't articulate why. So I'm going to go convert a few things into Terraform. It's like, oh, I see why they were using bash. Terraform can't do everything. I get it. But I found some parts that are really good at it. And so here's what I'll do. I'm going to plead my case a slightly different way. Bash is great for these things, as highlighted here. But Terraform can reduce the amount of bash that we're writing. And remember this incident we had? I'm going to show you how I can solve it from learning from that incident, how Terraform can present it. And I'll just keep a running log of opportunities. And I'm just going to keep it in a doc. And every time I get the opportunity, I'm going to say, hey, here's an opportunity that we could leverage. Let me know when you're ready. And I've done this a couple of times in my career. And so, yes, you lose the argument the first time. You lose it the third time. But then there's a scenario where it's like, yo, we got to stand up a lot of infrastructure quick, man. And we ain't going to be able to do it with these bash scripts. It's like, yo, I feel you. Now, I know you ain't gonna like this, but I can use this Terraform and get it done by tomorrow. And they're gonna be like, what's more important, the batch scripts or getting it done by tomorrow? And look, there's no guarantee, but these are two-way decisions. I said, look, let me try to Terraform. If it works, then maybe we can rock with it going forward. And then you demonstrate that it's worse, because see, now you're ready. Remember that doc you got? Remember those examples? Remember all that work you kind of put in? Because you want to be right at the right time. Now it's your time to shine. So yes, you may get a conflict. And to me, as a professional, like, you know how you go, to the car deal, car mechanic, they say, yo, man, you really need to get some new tires. And you say, nah, I'm gonna ride with these. And they say, I'm gonna need you to sign this waiver that if you crash into a light pole on the way out of here, you understood that I was a professional, and I highlighted that you missing a tire. Actually, you was sparking when you pulled in here. This is obviously wrong, but this is your car. And then you gotta do what you gotta do. Now, if that person were to crash into the light pole, you can help them, bring them back into the shop, make sure that they're actually okay, and then give them that new set of tires. So be patient. It's his company, if that's the way he wants to run it. But again, sometimes you can take the emotion out of these things by being patient, writing things down, be right at the right time.
And your manager, congratulations on the promotion. The question I have is, how did you, from what I understood from what you were talking about tonight, is you have done some kind of stint at management. How did you, what helped you make up your mind which path to take, go deeper into management or kind of stay more technically aligned? And I'm sorry if you already answered this. It's kind of it's something that I have my doubts and my thoughts about. So my path has been managing now for 3 years. And sometimes I'm not sure if that's the path I really want to carry on taking. So some advice would be appreciated.
Yeah, it depends on the opportunity that I wanted. When I was at Puppet, I joined as an engineer on the open source team. I wrote a lot of code. Before joining Puppet Labs, I was at a financial institution where I was using Puppet in production, and I was starting to contribute to it as an open source project. But at that time, I was a team lead. I built a small team of people that were kind of changing the way the organization did automation and all of those things. So I really enjoyed being a team lead. And the reason why I wanted to be a team lead, because I wanted to keep the bar high. I wanted to give people opportunity. And I wanted to just make sure that I can impact beyond what I could do by myself. So at that point in time, especially in that institution where it was really hard to move things, there was no way I was going to move things by myself. So I had to step up. In that organization, the best way to make impact was to take on a little more leadership. And so I was able to build a team. I was able to help set hiring standards. I was able to kind of grow people that wanted to move into that kind of work. And that's just how it worked at that particular company. So I learned how to make the best impact. So team lead it was. And then when I got to Puppet Labs, maybe that wasn't the perfect thing that I needed to do. And so I went to Puppet Labs as an individual contributor because I really wanted to focus on learning Ruby. I wanted to learn how Puppet actually worked. I wanted to learn about the Puppet DSL, the compiler. Because remember, I got this map. I know what I need next. And the thing I had on my map wasn't management. It was being a better engineer in config management. I wanted to learn promise theory. I wanted to learn all the bells and whistles behind this technology. And for me, at that transition point, it didn't mean management. Remember what I said earlier, you're not only a manager. You're not only a Linux system administrator. That's just the role you have right now. And again, I'm communicating to people what I have on my map. So when I'm asking for directions or applying for jobs, people are clear about where I'm at. So people might say, hey, I noticed you're a manager at that company. Can you come be a manager here? That's not on my map. That's where you want me to go. That's not on my map. My map clearly says I want to be an engineer working on the core Puppet, learning these things. So then everything else I kind of ignore and block out. But once you put that out into the universe, then guess what? I gave a talk at a Puppet conference. They asked me to come in. I said, this is what I wanted to do. They were like, deal. I came in, and that's the thing that I created for myself, and I was able to do. But guess what? Eventually, it would show better impact for me to get the things I wanted to do done by becoming a team lead again. And then I became a manager again over the ops team, including some small sprinkles of engineering. And so for me, that was just the right thing. So I kind of flew in and out. But then there was a crossroad. When I went to CoreOS and I really figured out, someone actually told me, like, Kelsey, you're good at this public speaking thing. And what I learned was public speaking is another form of leadership. And I got lucky to be on the world's biggest stages that I can actually influence and inspire open source communities, companies, competitors, colleagues. And that was a form of leadership. And I started like, oh my God, I don't gotta be a manager to lead. And then I started opening up my DMs, and I found that I can actually be a mentor to people who are not even on my team. And so I started to expand because I did like elements of it. But I'm gonna be honest, man, when I met Rob Pike and all of those folks at GopherCon, the people who had just created the Go programming language, and I knew, and that was like the first company like Google that I personally have seen that had a real individual contributor track, like almost to the VP level, that you can be an individual contributor and still make an impact. Google knows how to manage that. And so when I saw what they did and saw the type of impact they were making, I was like, yo, I don't really need to climb the corporate ladder from a management perspective, because now that I'm looking down at my map, I knew what I wanted to do, and I could fulfill those management components in other ways. And so then I made it real clear. I am done with management. I don't disrespect management, because I know management is a partnership in order to succeed as an individual contributor, but that's what I want to be. I want to double down on being an individual contributor so I can learn some new skills. So I made that pivot 7 years ago. And again, I'm at an institution or an organization that understands and has a clear path to maintaining that. And look, along the way, I've definitely got lots of offers to come be a VP of something somewhere else. I've gotten offers to be a founder of some technology that I was into at the time. I've gotten offers to be manager roles internally. And I decided, no, I'm on the path that I've laid out for myself. I'm going to stick to it. And to be honest, I'll tell you, individual contributor sometimes is a harder path, because there's nothing better than being able to share the success of your team. So if you got 200 people reporting to you in some way, you get to have a collection of that effort represented in your promotion process. And when you're an individual contributor, it's a little harder, but it's possible that your contributions to the whole, you got to get teams willing to share credit with you, especially when there's a strategic requirement. So my final answer here is, you control that lever. You got to write that map. And honestly, there are skills that I learned from management that makes it easy for me to manage myself. And I understand what my manager needs from me in order for both of us to be successful. So that's what I think about it. It's just a role at a point in time, and you decide. Thank you for that question. I'm going to toss it over to David. Introduce yourself. Ask your question.
Hey, Kelsey, I'm David. One thing I'd be really curious about understanding from your perspective, for teams that manage high levels of complexity, how do you keep knowledge together? How do you motivate folks to either document things or the type of stuff that, the type of work that engineers don't typically enjoy doing? How do you make sure that everyone remains on track, everyone remains in the know, and that the company or the organization maintains a strong handle on whatever it is that makes them so special? Would be curious to your take.
Yeah, I remember I had a situation where I was managing the QA team, the documentation team, the engineering team, and the docs team was like, yo, man, y'all don't be writing no docs, man. We got to go and reverse engineer every feature and guess what it's supposed to do, why it exists. And honestly, we don't have time to explore and discover everything, so things go undocumented, and that just compounds over time. And so one thing that, someone on the technical documentation side educated me, I was like, look, man, if we can just get the Angie team, and they called it pre-docs, right? And maybe this probably occurred at Puppet the first time I seen it. And so what's pre-docs? It's like, look, all we need is just like, if it's a command line tool, what the flag is, example output, and why someone should use it. Don't worry about anything else. If you just give me that in a text file, markdown, we don't even care what it looked like. But we just need that little snippet, and then we'll take it and turn it into something for external customers or for the internal knowledge base. And so then I just kind of got with people and was like, yo, I want y'all to try to do this thing. And they was like, how are we supposed to do this? There ain't no docs. I was like, exactly, my boy. It ain't no docs. And you sitting here stranded. This is what y'all doing to the teammates. This is what you're doing to the customer. That's not how we finna move, right? And so I see your point. So what's the solution? Yo, we've been experimenting with pre-docs, right? And so I think not every team has the luxury of doing it. I remember the same question. We used to ask this about writing tests. How do you get developers to write tests for their code, right? And then culturally, I think a lot of people have learned over time, you got to write some tests. You can't just throw code in with no tests, especially when you're working on the team. I think of knowledge like that as well. You know what I mean? You can't just be adding stuff to the code base and not really having a plan. So usually, how much docs are you writing before you even start working on this thing? The importance of having consensus. And honestly, the teams and companies that promote that kind of work will inspire that kind of work. I've never seen anything else other than making sure that people who take the time to do it get rewarded and compensated for doing so. And so whenever I've been the manager, you know how you get people promoted within your organization, they send out those emails thanking people for the work, highlighting the promotion. I would do stuff like, yo, I really want to highlight this next promotion. It's really special to me. They do something that few engineers in the world have ever accomplished. They write docs. The docs have had this impact on the team. The number of people that can be onboarded in less than a day because of this documentation. So you have to give super clear examples. And honestly, if I'm asking people to do something, are you doing it yourself? Like, I need to see some good examples. Maybe you're the person that's going to write the template. Maybe you're the person that's going to introduce the concept of pre-docs and show it. So when people are working next to you, they're like, yo, man, he's always producing docs for everything he do. His docs look wonderful. They look beautiful. And then you start being the example, and then maybe you start holding people accountable just a little bit, even within your own domain. So you get that code review, right? And ain't no docs. But hey, man, this code look great. And we missing something. And the important part is you got to pause for it, man. You can't just say what they missing. You just got to put, I think we missing something. And then send comment. And then they're going to be like, what am I missing? And then you just say docs. And then they got to sit with it because they know documentation is required. And since you do them as well, they may respect the fact that you're asking them to do the same. And so, look, this is a thing that usually people don't appreciate until they need them. And that's the way I try to do that in my own personal journey. All right, next question. Daria, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Hi, it's Diera.
Diera, nice to meet you.
So my question was more so about coming up, and forgive me if this was already asked, I joined late, but coming out with your map. A lot of things I'm seeing on Twitter particularly there was this big push of people trying to get into tech, and now that they've been here 2 or 3 years, they reach like the mid-level point. They don't really know which way to go, or even like what to start looking at to start coming up with some ideas.
I like that question, and I'm going to answer it again because I've been here a long time and new people come and go. So, and also I get a chance to rethink about it too. When I was first starting out, my guideposts were whatever the job openings were and something that was accessible to me, right? So I would go to I don't know if it's still a thing, like dice.com, and I would put in a few keywords, and then I would sort the jobs by distance from me. And then that was my guidepost, right? How much are they paying? What skills are required? And so just looking at those job postings, I was like, all right, that's going to be my light post. They need some Linux, I'm gonna learn that. This looks interesting, I'm gonna learn that. And ideally, when I got either the skills or the confidence, I would apply to those jobs and use that as a feedback loop to tell me where I was, right? And look, I get that's external validation, but that's just how the job market goes sometimes. And so I would get that job and now I got the skills. And to your point, so you there now, and you start to kind of rise up a little bit. You get that little promotion, you get that raise, you hit up Applebee's, you buying, well, you ain't buying drinks for everybody, but you might let them get a main entree after happy hour. So you doing them, and now once that settles down, you like what's next. And so for me, it can be hard sometimes because depending on how organization is set up, you can't see other people who are in those other roles. Like when I used to work in tech support, when I used to be on the phone, we used to be in a room isolated from every other job role in the technical sphere. I didn't even know we had developers, right? It never crossed my mind that they even worked in the same building as me. And so that was hard. But one thing I also started to do was go to lunch, have conversations. You know, sometimes companies will have like lunch and learns, or they'll have offsites. And look, I started to learn, like, can I attend your offsite? I just want to see what the PMs do. Can I attend your offsite? I want to see what the infrastructure people do. When that's not possible, I also started going to meetups. And when people would introduce themselves and they say, hey, what do you do? And say, oh, I do QA. What is that? Like, what's your job? And it's like, well, you know, I test the software. And look, I may not know what that means, so I'm writing things down. And I ask myself, like, damn. And one thing I used to do is look for inspiration. I would like search for those terms and try to see who was the leader in that space and watch a YouTube video or read their book and be like, let me see what that role is all about. And if you can find a good role model in one of those roles, then I would kind of feel inspired. Like, you know what, maybe I don't want to be a QA person, but I'm definitely going to learn how to write unit tests and throw that as a possible thing on my radar. And then what I would do is just try to figure out a role type, and then I used to just search for the role model. So whether that role model was on my team, a different department at the same company, or at a meetup, I'm just trying to find people doing different things. And honestly, just, you know, hopefully you can find a network of people that can be honest about their journey. So maybe you find someone and they've been in the game for 10 years. Be careful, and I use this phrase a lot. Some people got 10 years of 1 year experience. And they may not have evolved. Maybe they've just been doing the same thing over. That may not be the right role model for you. So you got to be careful with that. But expand your network. Remember, the current company you're at isn't your end destination. It's just a place, and you start to look for these networking things. If you don't see them available, maybe ask your manager, ask another coworker. Hey, I need to see a few more things. I need to talk to a few more people, and don't be afraid to tap into that community. So that's the way I try to keep pushing myself. Also, again, I said this earlier, whatever technology you're working on, for example, I meet some people and I use PHP. It's a programming language people used to use. It's still a thing, right? I think a lot of people may prefer different programming languages. And so you're using PHP in 2022 and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'll ask that person, it's like, well, how far did you go with it? Did you just copy and paste a bunch of code off of Stack Overflow? Look, ain't nothing wrong with that because I do that from time to time. Or have you really got deeper into this particular technology? That's what I mean by 10 years of 1 year experience. Do you know that there's a faster runtime for PHP that can make PHP rival some of the faster runtimes or language ecosystems that are out there? Have you looked at this PHP transpiler that takes PHP and turns it into maybe JavaScript or something like that? Have you gone deeper with the skills you have? Because sometimes that may get you interested in other fields. Like if you click one layer below PHP, for example, or you can actually click one layer above. Maybe you start doing front end work. So now you can do not just the back end stuff, but you can start to do the front end. And then you say, yo, I actually like this kind of work. You know what? Maybe you find yourself contributing to the open source project that backs PHP. Maybe you find yourself working on compilers all of a sudden. So I think the way I like to do it with that map, I like to know where I am and then start drawing lines, almost like in 3 dimensions. If I stay where I am, what is going deeper down the rabbit hole looks like? Staying where I am, what is going to outer space look like as I move up the stack? Or What if I was to go to a different city and just learn something completely different? What would that look like? And then you can just start drawing people who live there, people who have those roles. And you can just talk to them, right? Before you buy a house in a new city, you might want to visit it first. You might want to talk to someone who lives there and be like, hey, do you like it here? Like, no, girl, they don't got electricity from noon to 5. Negative, right? So that's the way I would think about career projection, progression. But to me, I just like having that mapping concept where I know where I am, and I'm okay with moving in any direction, northwest, south, doesn't matter. Thank you for your question. Sulamite, I believe it is. If you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hi, my name is Shulamite. Can you hear me this time?
I can, yes.
Yeah, okay. My name is Shulamite John. I am a software engineer, front end precisely. And yeah, I have over 4 years experience in the front end space. And last year, I furthered my education and I decided to go into to learn entrepreneurship. And I also graduated from the School of Entrepreneurship and Technology from MEST. And during this time at MEST, I really fell in love with products. And because of my love, I had to transition into product management. And apart from what I learned at MEST, I've also been taking courses, reading articles, and also doing a whole lot of learning in product management. And I've volunteered to a lot of projects and products, and I've also helped co-found some products that were just for project purpose. So currently, I'm looking for a job in product management, and all the openings I'm saying are over 3 years of experience, and I have been applying anyways, but I haven't really seen a role for a junior position in product management. And sometimes I sit down and I feel like I made a mistake switching career, and I'm trying to go with the love of products, and it really most of the time do weigh me down. So I want to know if you have at any time in your career history felt this way, and if yes, how did you manage it, and what advice do you have to give? And yeah, congratulations on your award.
Yeah, that's I've done it all the time actually. I learned to try to embrace, like, when I'm learning something new, I call it learning in public. I just stop being afraid. Look, I know I'm not an expert. Here's what I've tried. Here's where I'm trying to understand. Here's where I'm going. And look, these pivots, and I've done a lot of them, even while I was at Google, just making pivots. And sometimes you pivot and you're never really starting over. You might be new to product management, but you're probably not new to life. And so there's some skills that come over, like how to make decisions, maybe how to build things in general, and maybe not from the product perspective. And the other thing that I tried to do is I stopped with the junior, mid-level, senior level stuff, right? Because let them tell you that. If you go to an interview and they want to bring you in as a senior product manager, and you're like, well, I've only been doing it 2 years at this company, take the deal. Let them tell you that. So I would say this: if you're a product manager right now, and that's the career that you enjoy the most, and ideally you get to practice that discipline in your current situation, your goal should be trying to get some achievements, not just going through the routine, but you want to get some outcomes. You want to demonstrate impact. And the reason why I say that is when you go interview to another place, now that you made this career pivot, and they say, hey, tell us about yourself, tell us about your accomplishments, tell us about your impact. You may not realize that you might have more actual experience than people who've done this for a lot longer than you have. So you can use that interview process as a feedback loop. And also, again, there are product management meetups. Maybe try to go see what people think is the state of the art. And maybe you can learn from that. Maybe you can try some new things. Maybe you bring new elements to product management. But to me, I think it's one of these things where, of course, you're learning something new. Of course, you're not going to start off being an expert. But as long as I think that you're working towards it, you kind of know where you are. But to me, at any time I make a pivot, my goal has always to make an impact. I've gone from system administration to software development. And I remember making that transition is like, I could say things like, I am not a developer, I'm a junior developer. But the reason why I couldn't accept being a junior developer, I had too much experience as a system administrator that I can leverage to make me more than just a junior developer. So I had to start giving myself credit, right? Even just as a lived person in the world, that all contributes to whatever job that you're doing. So product management, you may be new to that. Figure out what skills you have that are a little bit more seasoned and bring those to the table. But look, I think it's okay to be a little patient, know where you are, and then trend towards improvement and then build a network around you. And again, I don't know, just me speaking here, it's my opinion. You don't really need to put the junior PM part on there. Just put PM and let the interview decide. You might surprise yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very helpful.
Jessica, you ready? All right, we're just gonna let whoever unmutes themselves first can go.
Hello.
Go.
Hi, Kelsey.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear from you. I've been following you quite a while at Kubernetes. And so I also work as a senior platform engineer at my company. I'm leading our Kubernetes, GitLab runner, Kubernetes CI/CD pipelines. But I just want to ask a question from you, an experienced person in the industry. So I used to ask my staff engineer this a lot. We have like kind of four in our platform engineering team. We have like 4 divisions. We have the observability team who focus more on the observability. And we have the compute team who focus more on some compute stuff. And we have the DevX team, and we have some infrastructure team. But I worry a lot, in the industry where when you're going to the next role and they expect to know a lot of things, you just can't say, I work on Kubernetes alone. They expect to work on Terraform, expect to know CI/CD pipelines, expect to know a bunch of, like node rotation, all of those things. But when you're in a big company where you just have to be in a single team, so how do you manage that as you go along your career?
Yeah, when I see, and it's okay if you want to, you can get really far in this world being a specialist. You can make a bet on a particular tool, programming language, whatever. You can do okay in this world doing that, but it will probably limit you, I think, because, for example, let's say you use Kubernetes, right? So everything is Kubernetes. And as someone hiring, I would say, but why though? And if you struggle with that, that's okay, but it may tell me that you may not understand. So really, it's not Kubernetes. You're literally saying, hey, my role is to deliver software and meet the company's SLAs. I work at I'm just giving you an example here. I work at a bank, and we can only tolerate so much downtime before we start paying penalties to regulators. And so the things that I'm responsible for are keeping our applications online, keeping them secure, and ensuring that there isn't too much time between software being ready and software being deployed. And I interface with these other disciplines this way. And okay, so what impact have you had? Well, when I joined the team, we've never met our SLAs in 3 years. I've done some research, and it turns out Kubernetes does a good job of checking a few boxes to get us to the SLA, for example. So example 1, example 2, example 3. I want to hear about impact, right? The company had this challenge. Looking at the tools available to me, Kubernetes was the right tool to fulfill this particular challenge. And here's how I used Kubernetes for this particular challenge. And here's the impact of that, right? Launches versus landings. We leveraged it to solve the problem, and here's what the payoff was.
Okay, well, how about you in interview process? And they ask some this bunch of questions in depth,
and I mean the experts to provide it very good as a senior engineer, but you've not been working on this core area for some time. I mean, some might waive it, some don't really waive it.
Well, look, most engineers are probably, maybe I shouldn't say most. Some engineers are terrible interviewers. I mean, awful, right? Because what are they interviewing for? Hey, how much Kubernetes have you rememorized? So welcome to Jeopardy. Tell me exactly the command line flag to deploy Kubernetes on Wednesday in Moscow when the temperature is below 5 degrees Celsius. What the hell kind of question is that? We can Google that, right? And maybe they want to make sure you're aware. And look, sometimes you will run into that and there's going to be trivia night, right? And then hopefully your trivia is where it needs to be and you can answer all the trivia questions. I've done a lot of those in my lifetime. I remember making sure I was good at trivia. I would remember all the command line flags. I would be able to write them on a whiteboard. I would be able to type them all on demand. And look, some people really wanted you to be a walking piece of documentation, even though they know good and well they don't know the answers to some of these trivia questions because they just looked them up before the interview. So that is unfortunate. Sometimes we have that in our industry. But I think a good interview is trying to figure out who you are, what experience do you have, and can you augment and make an impact on the team? So for example, let's say I'm trying to hire someone to work in the observability team, right? And you're not an observability engineer, at least that's not what it says on LinkedIn. But I already got those people on my team. But you have a Kubernetes background. So look, if I'm a good manager, I know where my team is strong. I know where my team could use some help. And it's like, look, I don't want just another observability person that has used the exact same tools because that's not going to make my team better. We got enough of that. What we're missing on this team is we don't got anybody that has Kubernetes experience because our team in observability is now being asked to do observability for Kubernetes. As a manager, here's how I see you in particular, given your background, given your expertise, might be able to augment my team, and we are willing to close the knowledge gap on the observability side, but you have something that the rest of my team doesn't have. And last thing I'll say here is, not every interview is good at doing that. And so sometimes what I've tried to do is make sure they understand what my talents are. So look, they can do their trivia. I'll probably respect it. At this stage of my career, I'm probably not doing trivia-based interviews. I just don't really want to do that right now. But what I'll try to do is say, look, do you have any questions for me, right? Some good interviews will allow you to do that. You all ask me a lot of questions, and I may not remember all of the answers because I'm going to be honest with you all. I do use Google to look up command line flags in my everyday job, just out of transparency. I actually look things up, but I want to make sure you know my experience. So you asked me a question about X. Here's where I've used X to solve a problem. Even though I'm not an expert on observability, I have configured Prometheus to pull metrics from my Kubernetes cluster. And I know that if you pull too many too fast, you can actually take down the API server. And I know that you shouldn't do that. I know you didn't ask those questions, but I just want to make sure you understand the depth and breadth of my experience as y'all consider me as a candidate for this job. And so that's been my technique.
Well, thank you. I think I learned something from that. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Pitt, cat with the hat backwards. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hope you can hear me so far. Okay, my name is Harris. Greetings from Germany, by the way. It's such a cool kind of opportunity to listen in and tune in. I mean, I once met you. I mean, I saw a presentation from you about Kubernetes and the automation with Google Assistant, I think it was. And in this presentation, was a video upload on YouTube which just said, and now I can just tell Google to just scale my cluster. And that was the moment I realized, that was back in 2017. That is very dope, actually. But what the heck is Kubernetes now? So then my journey started basically, and like from then on, I just transitioned into a role of an infrastructure guy for us and a DevOps engineer for my company, and that's actually pretty great. Now my question is, I want to flip the switch, the flip chart so far, because as of now, we talked about kind of managing other people and kind of senior level experience, but for me, it would be very interesting, actually, based on your experience with you working with juniors, with mid-level candidates, with seniors even. But what would you say is a very good junior? So let's say there's a person you see, maybe in your team, maybe in our team, I don't care, that you can see the potential basically. But what would you consider being kind of a very good candidate for maybe not a Kelsey Hightower? Know what I'm saying? Like, no one can replace you, obviously, but is there kind of something that makes a junior shine in your eyes based on what you saw so far? That would be very interesting, actually.
Yeah, so, and again, the way I view the world is different from some people. So the way that people shine, not junior, not senior, but I get the context of the question because there is a point in all of our careers, mine included, where you kind of just start out. And so you're new to the team, you're new to the technology, but you just knew. And so what I want to see, what I really don't want to see is someone who kind of, hides, doesn't ask questions, is afraid to try to do anything because they don't yet know anything. And so that to me isn't full potential. The thing I like, and some people don't, but the thing I like, I love the questions because I'm always junior in something new too. Like my explorations in crypto, my exploration in databases, my exploration, I'm just now really learning the front end like that. I'm 41 years old and I'm finally really, I've done some front end work before, but like the whole Next.js stuff, I am definitely new to that world. And I don't try to pretend, but I ask questions to understand. Like just 2 days ago, I was doing a fireside chat about WASM. I have definitely run through some examples. I've never really used it in production. I've read all the other stuff that everyone else has a chance to read. But luckily for me, some of the people who are working on WASM as a startup, as a full-time thing, they were there. The first thing I did is say, hey, introduce myself. Hey, I'm Kelsey. I heard you work on WASM, and I got some questions. And I try to have intelligent questions. So if you're new to the team, I at least want to say here, hey, I went to the docs. I read it twice. I still don't understand what I'm supposed to do right now. The thing I like about that is I got something that's actionable because I wrote those docs so the person new to the team could actually use the docs to be successful. Obviously, I've personally failed in that regard, so that means I got some work to do. So now I'm going to ask that person. Now they've asked it, I'm like, okay, for me, this person is worth investing in. You know why? Because they told me that they've already read the docs twice. That means they've already shown me that they're willing to invest in themselves. So now I'm like, okay, you finna get all my time because I know what's going to happen. Once I show you, and then if you turn around and update the docs, oh my God, we friends now. We went from coworkers to friends real quick. Because if I give you some knowledge and then you turn around and I go to the page and I see last edited by this person that I gave my time to, that to me lets me know that I got a coworker, I got someone that I can trust. So we went from not being afraid to invest in themselves, proving to me that I need to invest in them, but then turn around and doing that and building trust. I like that part. So for example, if I give you a task and you don't know how to do it, now you might be afraid to tell me in the beginning that you don't know how to do it. And that's fine. You'll learn, depending on who you're working with, that you don't have to pretend. You can just be honest with some people. Not everybody works like that, so I respect it. But let's say I give you a task and you don't know how to do it. You may think you don't want to let me down, so you don't say anything, and you go to your desk and you just try to do it all by yourself. And so now I kind of like the fact that you're at least trying to put in the effort. But the thing I wanted to see you do, though, is just say, yo, I don't know how to do this. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know how to do this, and I'm going to need some help here. And again, that helps me build trust. And so the next time you get that same task, it looks like you're improving. I'm going to be honest with you. Those are the main qualities I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone that's willing to get at that answer no matter how hard they got to work at it. And so when I see someone like that, I'm going to invest right back. And then if a person does that long enough, no way they remain junior for too long. Thank you for that question. We're going to keep it moving. Siraj, unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hey Kelsey, hi. This is Suraj here. I'm a senior engineer. Work at Adobe. I just had a question for you. How do you ask hard questions and take rejections? Because sometimes I feel when you put forward an idea to your colleagues or peers about process changes, you end up getting rejected. And I think that's a part of the job. But how do you keep yourself motivated and keep on churning new ideas and putting out great ideas at the same time?
Oh, I love this question, man. What is this dude doing with his Twitter profile? Sorry for that distraction. You know what? The first time I was really hit with this, like where it really almost had the potential to mess up my morale, it was actually when I got to Puppet Labs for the first time. So at this time, I'm about 8 years into my career. And I had joined Puppet. I was working remote from Atlanta. And I was a software engineer. And I was working on integrating Puppet dependency management into the Puppet command line itself. So for those that don't know, Puppet is a configuration management tool, and people will write Puppet code to automate or manage something like add a user to a server or install an application on a server. And so once you wrote that Puppet logic, you could ideally set up into a Puppet module, give it a version. But at that time, we didn't have a way to share it, distribute it, nothing. The Puppet Forge, now there's a marketplace for this kind of stuff, but it didn't exist then. So here I am, I'm super naive. I'm coming from a company where I used to use Puppet in production. I had a few open source commits under my belt. And I was like, I'm gonna add the dependency management in the tool so it ain't so hard for our customers to figure out how to manage and distribute Puppet code. And I'm working at home, I'm burning the midnight oil, I'm happy, I'm smiling like, boy, when they see this, I'm gonna kill them. I got on the airplane, I'm working in Atlanta, I flew to Portland, and we had these demo days, like maybe nighttime or like Friday, towards the end of work, maybe at lunch. And I remember I got up there, I was like, I'm finna kill them. Wait till I show them that I finally integrated dependency management in Puppet itself. So now you could do Puppet module, install a particular version, and it will be all set up and you could just use it. So I do my little demo, kind of show my little code, and someone raised their hand and was like, hey, we already tried that and we determined as a team that's a bad idea. I'm sitting there, I was like, what the hell? I thought this is what we needed. I thought this was like part of the big vision. I know it was a hard problem, but maybe my code isn't perfect. Maybe my demo isn't perfect, but it worked. And, the other people I've shown it to seems to be on the right path. And honestly, the person who said that to me was like, pretty high-ranking engineer on the team. And I'm just sitting at the podium or standing there like, okay, that's not what I expected to happen. And honestly, I was kind of feeling a certain way, but I didn't really have words to say because, ideally these people know what's best, right? They're the team leads. And so we had a UX designer, and the UX person, and this was pretty small, Puppet was pretty small at that time. His name was Randall. And I remember him well because he looked like a genie that could grant you wishes. And Randall was like, F that. That was dope. And don't let no one, don't be afraid of your own power. That was freaking amazing. You got the user experience right. That's going to make it easier for our users to use. And we'll figure this part out. And we ended up forming a team. And the team worked on it. And that led to the Puppet Forge. We got a PM for the Forge. That tool probably still stands today. I'm pretty sure the code has changed over time. But that thing ended up working. And so in that case, I wasn't able to, recover all by myself. So I took that feedback. Honestly, I wasn't able to handle it because of who it was coming from. But after that event, I know now, whether they will like that change or not, there's a place to make this stuff happen. So when people say no, well, they're just saying no in that time. They're saying no in that context. The thing I love about open source is the fact that while your company may say no, and I used to work at a lot of organizations, we are not using Puppet. We are not automating anything. That's too efficient. Stick to the Jira ticket. And you'd be like, wow, we finna just do Jira tickets forever. No automation, huh? That's the thing. That's cool. Does my check clear? Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to keep pushing, but I'm not finna just, I'm not finna just waste all my time being upset that they don't tell me yes. Because guess what? The open source community exists. So I used to go home and contribute to Puppet itself. I used to be on Slack or IRC. Back then we were using IRC. And I would just help other people figure out how to automate stuff at their job because their employer said yes. So to be honest, maybe it's yes or no in that context, but there's so many lanes out here, whether it's open source, a different company, a different team. You can get to yes. You just got to make sure the path is there. Hopefully that answers the question, but thank you for that. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for answering. That was a good insight. And thanks for taking my question.
I'm going to take a couple more. Praveen, if you could, unmute yourself, introduce yourself. Ask your question.
Hello, hi Kelsey. I'm Praveen. I'm here. Even I'm not a developer or I'm not into programming or anything, but I'm so inspired by your talks, your presentation. So my question to you is, I would love to know, how many talks or how many presentations have you been giving, right? So how many talks did it take for you to become where you are? The way you present the talks, it's like they're so amazing, even though they're so technical talks, but anyone can listen to it and follow and enjoy all the presentations. So I just want to know, how many talks did it take for you to be here?
I have a question for you first. I know we've met and you had a keynote that you're working on, and I try to give you some advice about that keynote and how to make sure that you, the person, shines above the slides. So maybe tell me how the presentation is going, whether you've given it yet or not.
Oh yeah. I mean, yes, of course. We had a chat, and I know you've given me some kind of advice. I'm not presented yet, but I think I've prepared. I'm there, so I can say that I'm just being me. I'm just trying to be my authentic self and sharing my own story. So I think that's what is making me. I mean, that's what I'm trying to use to prepare my keynote, because I'm sharing my real story of mine, what I've gone through, and I just want to share what has helped me to inspire others. So I think that's what I'm trying to give back to the community of what I got so much from the community. I think that's what helped me in preparing my keynote talk.
Awesome. All right, so I don't know how many talks I've given. I don't know actually anymore, but I remember the first one. And the first one was in Atlanta at a Georgia Tech Python meetup. I was working in a financial services company, and I had just started learning Python. And I was using that newfound skill to start converting some of their old COBOL mainframe jobs into Python. And so I'm learning Python, and I'm like, I like this. And at the time, I was a system administrator that was really using Python as a replacement for bash scripts. So at the time, I didn't consider myself a developer, even though I was starting to write these batch processing jobs. We call them ETL jobs, extract, transform, and load jobs in Python. And so I'm getting into this, and I was like, I don't know how good I am, and I also don't really know what I should be learning next. And so me and one of my best friends to this day, we went to a local meetup at Georgia Tech. And I was like, wow, Georgia Tech, this is where all the smart people are. And then they were giving these talks about Python. So we go and we sit in the audience, and there's a guy, I believe his name is Brandon Rhodes. And I watched the speakers, and they did a pretty good job. But I was like, if they can do that, then I think I can too. And so what I did was I wanted to do a topic to show that I belong there. I didn't want to just talk about something basic. I wanted to try to prove myself. And so I don't know why I did this topic Python versus Haskell. I know Haskell, but it sounded real cool, and it sounded complicated enough to warrant being on the same stage as other folks. I made all these slides, and I was comparing Python list comprehensions versus Haskell list comprehensions. And I really enjoyed preparing for that talk because it taught me more about Python and also exposed me to a different programming language. So I go up there, and I remember I was doing like each slide, because I wasn't comfortable doing my demos at that time. But on each slide, I would have the command I ran or the code snippet, and then how it ran and the output. And so I did my talk, and someone's like, yo, I really like the fact that you put all the code there and you show the output like if you were to run the code. And I was like, oh, okay, so that feedback told me that part was cool. And other than that, I was just mimicking what they were doing, right? You have slides, you introduce yourself, and then you kind of be technically as accurate as you can and don't sway too far from the facts. I would do these meetups for a while. I'm gonna be honest with you, I got tired of doing slides, straight up. I was like, I am not very artistic. It takes a lot of work to do perfect slide decks. If you've ever given a talk, you be tweaking that slide deck forever. Right before you go on stage, you tweaking that slide deck. I said, let me try something different. And I dropped the speaker notes one time. Actually, in my talk, the first talk that I did at a public event was PuppetConf 2012. And I didn't have any speaker notes. And I'm sitting on stage like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to say? But it came to me, I'm just going to talk like I normally talk in front of my peers. And if a joke comes out, a joke comes out. I kind of know where the slides are, but I just took the speaker notes out. And I actually learned that I have trouble pronouncing certain words. At that time, I was afraid of certain words because even though I got my tooth replaced, I had a tooth missing. And so when I would say certain words, it would just come out weird because it turns out your teeth are really important in terms of how you speak. And so I would shy away from certain words altogether. And if I forgot to shy away from that word, I would say it anyway, and it would sound weird, especially when I would listen back. And so I was really nervous about that, but it turns out no one cared that I was saying the words wrong. It didn't matter anymore. So I was like, all right, I can actually say the words wrong, and it will be fine. Look, I got my tooth fixed, but it turned out that no one was really paying attention to that. And over years, I would meet different people, and they would explain to me how they were there for me. I think Bridget from Microsoft, I remember she was the first person, I think, to show up at one of my talks and live tweet it. Every word I said, all the highlights, she made me feel like a rock star. And I looked at her highlight reel and other people that did live tweets, and they were really calling out the good parts. And so they're kind of training you. And so then I decided I wanted to speak in a way on stage like I felt at my desk. So as I'm preparing for a talk or learning a new technology and there is no talk involved, a lot of times I'm only speaking just in time. I'm not really looking for a lot of talks, even though I get a lot of invitations these days. But when I'm on my laptop and I'm learning a new technology and I get excited, that becomes the foundation for my talk. And the way I would explain it to like a colleague, I might call a friend and it's like, boy, have you seen Golang? No, I ain't seen it. Man, hey, log on real quick. I'm going to share my screen. And I'll be like, let me show you something. I'm going to compile on my Mac. You see, this is Mac OS, right? He'd be like, yeah, get to the point. I said, just make sure you understand we on Mac OS right now. I'm going to build the app for Windows. He's like, you can do that? I was like, yeah. Go build something Windows. I said, you got your Windows desktop that you be gaming with? Yeah. Try this right now. I'm going to just send it to you. Single binary. Do I got to install Go? I was like, nah, you ain't got to install Go. Just put it on the machine and run it. He's like, give me a second. And he ruffling papers, moving things over, download it, and run it. And he was like, woo, that's dope. I'm like, I know, right? So then, when I go to a meetup and I'm talking about Golang, guess how I'm presenting? I'm presenting like that. That's how I'm coming with it. I'm bringing the same energy to the stage. So then I got real comfortable, just like, I need to recreate the feeling. Not just give y'all facts, not just be right, not just hold an opinion. I want you to actually feel something, like literally an emotional response. And if I do it right, and I've seen it, it was a KubeCon, and I was showing off this prototype I built. You know, I was contributing to Kubernetes, but it was time for me to take a step back. And I wanted to just show prototypes of what I wish I would see in the world. And I remember I'm doing this prototype of something, and I knew, and look, there's probably 10,000 people in that audience. But I saw the one person because I recognized them, because they got out of their seat and they left. And I was like, man, it's talking that bad? No way. They leaving? Maybe they got to go to the bathroom. But they left my talk, right? So I was like, I don't know how I'm feeling right now, but I got to stay focused because I'm on stage. And then, you know, after you give a talk, you got to check Twitter, you got to check your stats. Hopefully there's people saying nice things. I've trained myself to ignore the nonsense because it ain't going to make everybody happy. There have been some really great movies with terrible Rotten Tomato scores. So what am I to expect? But then I saw that person tweet, Kelsey ran this command, and I had a new idea that I had to leave the talk so I could work on it. That's how I knew I found my voice, and that's why I present the way I do. Hopefully that answers the question. Thank you for that question. I'm going to go to, I got a couple more people here. I'm going to invite them in as speakers. We're going to add them one by one. Thank you for waiting. Let's see. I'm just going to let the first person that unmutes themselves introduce themselves. There you go. Let's go.
Yes. Hey, Kelsey, how you doing? I missed you last time. Yeah, so a couple of things. There was a lady called Devin who was talking about moving to new technologies. And I've been in this industry for so long. And this industry is about waves. And I started in Germany. So my first professional job was in Germany, working in Fortran and C. And I really loved C. And then I discovered C++, and I came back to English. So I'm an English and a Java champion. And then I worked for a long time in C++. And then someone told me about this newfangled language called Java. I didn't understand it, and I jumped into Java. And as one of those things that I joined an investment bank, my first investment bank in London in 1998. So I've been going a long time. And so what I would say, first of all, to that lady Durbin and to others, is that, especially to ladies, and we are post-COVID now, just open your mind like a parachute and get to your local community group and learn from there. And you'll find a brand new direction. And I'm talking about technology path here. And I guess that also will work, I suppose, in London or in Great Britain. I've seen architecture, Ruby, project management, Agile. And I mean, the world has had a giant rug pull, first of all. And we've had all kinds of new beginnings. It's relevant to USA, George Floyd, we've got this war. And now companies, I guess, are panicking because, you can move to another company if you wanted to. You don't have to be up there with another guy and listen who said, wondering whether to stay with the same company. Well, you can move if you want to. And I'm interviewing a guy, myself, I'm kind of a senior manager, but still does development. And so what I would say, just keep your options open. The history of the industry, I know, and I'm on the technical part, is now we have Java, Kotlin, Kubernetes. Who knows what we will have in 3 or 5 years' time. So I would have this weird answer to a question, like an interview question, what would you like to do in 5 years? I don't know. The industry could change in 5 years. So stay with it My question for you, Kelsey, is that you were talking about pivoting. So I wondered how much you enjoyed doing 360s and I suppose mentoring and looking up and I guess managing teams. And I guess you've had some experience of that. I think I'm moving more into architecture, but I can see myself coding until I'm 70 years old. And that's where it's gonna go. I don't have any big plans to retire. And you need to keep your brain agile. So I'll stop right there. I've spoken a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I'm at a stage, and everybody's at a different stage. In particular, where I am, I spent a lot of time in this life learning how to work, and the things that I'm interested in for real is learning how to live. It was very different than being an architect, a developer, a coder, DevRel engineer, distinguished engineer. Those all are cool. I am taking a moment to celebrate it, but to be honest, I'm at the big picture game now. For me, it's literally life is short, period. If anything, a lot of people have rediscovered that because of what's happened in the last couple of years. And so for me, I'm not here to work. That's it. I'm at that point where that doesn't have to be the number one thing. I know what it's like when that is the number one thing. So for me going forward, I am really, really trying to make sure that all of this success translates into a life where work is an afterthought. That's the goal for me in particular. That's where I'm just trying to take it. Now, the things that I like doing, right? You talked about, keeping it going. I do plan to keep it going, but I don't plan to be the one doing it. This next generation is so, so, so important that I want to make sure that I'm spending more time making sure that next generation gets a chance in front of the keyboard. I want to make sure the next generation gets their turn on the stage. I just want to make sure that next generation teaches me a thing or two. So that's just where I'm at in the game. That's just where I am. So that's the way I kind of think about it going forward. So that's what's next for me. What's next for me is what's next for the next generation. So that's the way I think about it. Thank you for that statement. Thank you for that question. There's people doing it all the time. So I'm going to transition over to Damon. And you just and ask your question.
Hi, Kelsey. Good day. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been following you for a while now, and one thing that I admire about you is how you speak and how you make things seem really simple. Like make complex ideas really simple and understandable. So, as a software engineer, one issue I find hard to do is translating my thoughts, right? Translating those complex things I want to talk about into simple terms that others can understand, both colleagues and those that are not even in the tech space as well. So, what we advise in trying to get better at doing that?
Yeah, that is actually, this whole room is about, thank y'all for being here, celebrating this kind of transition to the new milestone I've hit career-wise at Google. And one element of that whole thing, one continuous thread, is the question you have, which is defining what to work on sometimes is harder than doing the work itself. And sometimes you have to gain consensus. And what I mean by consensus, that idea has to be clear enough that you can get people to agree, and sometimes it takes time, right? You might have an idea, and I've learned that sometimes you have to put that idea on paper. So you put the idea on paper, and I've learned that you can't just share with everybody. A lot of people may not necessarily be interested in making that idea better. Some people are just focused on tearing ideas down, and that's cool. We need those people, but we need them at a certain time. So I don't like to start with those people. So I try to have a smaller group of folks that I can test my ideas with. I also have more than one idea. So I tend to keep a lot of the ideas in some form of state, and those ideas evolve. And so a lot of times what will happen is, I love analogies. If to help myself understand something, I need to be related to something that's real. So if someone shows me Kubernetes, and I was fortunate to be asked to be a part of the Kubernetes documentary. So if you haven't seen it, it's really dope. And I have been doing Kubernetes this whole time. I've explained it 1,000 ways. And I remember the first time Kubernetes clicked for me, I've always tried to boil things down to their fundamentals, take away everything until the only things necessary to understand it or use it remain. So when I looked at Kubernetes the very first time, and I never thought about having to explain it to anyone else, I got that feeling when it clicked for me and it understood it. So when I was using Kubernetes for the first time, right, Kubernetes is this tool for distributing applications across multiple servers. And we talk about DevOps and digital transformation and platform engineering and SRE, all of these words. And if you operate at that level, you're going to be confused. It's too much. So I always like to start with, what were you doing before Kubernetes? And you say, well, before Kubernetes, I would provision the servers, I would write scripts, and I would copy things over. What were you doing before that? Well, I would do it manually. Got it. So before you had automation, these are the things you would do. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then so Kubernetes comes out, and in different contexts, people would say, what would Kubernetes mean to my organization or team? How is it different than what we're doing now? Right now, we have developers run the tools themselves, and we don't see the problem with that. We call it DevOps. And I say, you could do it that way, but some of these tasks, honestly, there's better abstractions for them. And they were like, could you explain? I was like, well, self-service to me is like calling a taxi, and the taxi driver gets out and makes you drive yourself to the airport. You'd be like, what the hell is that? That's not any service at all. And so the taxi driver's responsibility is to operate the platform in a way that I can just use it. And the interface to that, for me, if I'm paying, is the back seat. I don't want the steering wheel. I don't want to drive myself to the airport. That's why I call it a taxi. And so analogies like that help me understand what Kubernetes' job is, or helps me understand that Kubernetes is simply the car in that analogy. And you have to decide, are you a taxi driver that's going to build tools so people can just ride in the back seat? Or are you going to be the type of person that gets out of the front seat and makes people drive it themselves? So these analogies really help me articulate things by pattern matching to the real world. And so I do that for myself. I keep clicking down until I can get there. And look, there's some saying, I forget where it comes from. If you can't explain it in simple terms, then you do not understand it. And I think that's actually true. There are people who are knowledgeable about things, but they haven't really thought through it in a way to describe it so that other people can understand it too. And so for me, that's how I go about it. I'll say one more thing here. I'm just not afraid of running in public anymore. I'll try some analogy, and boy, y'all will tear me down on Twitter. Golly, if I hit y'all with a non-perfect analogy, people will be like, oh, that's not really how that works. And a lot of times, I'm kind of patient, and I'll just say, all right, let me just take that feedback, because normally what happens when people nitpick that way, they actually help me get to a better analogy. So I actually take that feedback and say, you know what, Kelsey, you got to do a better job. That analogy's got to be crisp, it's got to be tight, it's got to be fast. And so people help me do it. And then when I get them, I just put them in the memory bank and pull from them when I need to. So that's it. I try to take technical things, peel back the covers until I understand the fundamentals, and see if I can make it relate to real life. And if I can do more than give you a demo. I can give you a story. Thanks for that question. Hopefully I gave you a good answer. We're going to move to Ryan. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hey, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm outside. I just want to say, okay, lovely. I just want to say how much I appreciate the talk so far. I think I probably speak for everyone when I say how relatable a lot of this has been. And Aaron, your own journey has, it's just really nice to have, like you were talking about, role models. I think my question, something I've been thinking about a lot lately, the shift has always been towards more automation, right? More automation. And then you get an abstraction, and then you automate that abstraction. AI seems like the latest iteration of that. And I think there's a lot of anxiety as developer friends I have. Copilot is almost too good. And it's like, what is the future of development as it currently stands?
Well, I don't know. I think the people working on that problem have the right answer. But the way I see it is this. Why do we have developers in the first place? We have developers because the things we're building don't build themselves. So the future will be people building things that don't build themselves. If we get to a point where our job can easily be done by Copilot, then no one needs to do that job. Unfortunately, society isn't set up for the level of automation that we're progressing to, and I think that gets into some of the AI ML ethics. When you take away all the jobs through automation, what do people do if you're still trying to charge them rent? Right? So we got some social things to work through when it comes to things like AI and ML. But I also think people may be giving AI ML too much credit right now, right? Because humans have a lot of things going for us, right? We make decisions based on some emotional things that most people do not know how to encode into an algorithm, that most people don't know how to put into a data set to feed the model that comes out, right? So if we put it into perspective, most of the models that are available today are simply, I'm just going to say this, but not in hopefully in a disrespectful way, but they're guessing. That's why these models have scores and weights. I'm guessing that you shouldn't be allowed to open this bank account. I'm guessing that that's a cat and not a dog. And yes, those models can get really accurate to getting to 99% accurate that they always identify a cat instead of a dog, but they're still guessing. And so I think what we have to do as practitioners is that, what is the saying? If you automate yourself out of a job, more than likely there's going to be a better job on the other side of that. Right? So throughout my career, I've always tried to take my job to that red line where doing that job was better to be replaced by an automation tool I built or automation tool I found, letting that automation tool do what I was doing before. And I would tell you from the beginning of my career to where I am now, that has been the thing that helps me create the job that I actually want. So that's the way I kind of think about tools like Copilot. If Copilot can do the job, then I'm fine. They used to say this about libraries, right? Like people back in the day probably used to write their own TCP stacks. Operating systems, whether they're by default, so less people in the world write TCP stacks. And then we had people writing their own web servers if they wanted to process a web request. Now, almost every programming language has an HTTP library, so you don't have to do that. That doesn't mean we have less development jobs. Actually, the opposite is true. We have more development jobs because the number of people who can build things that can't build themselves has grown. So if you have a good idea, guess what you can do? You can go get a framework and let the framework do all the hard, nuanced stuff, and you get to focus on creativity and the thing that can't build itself. We see this in mobile development. We see this with games. There are people who have no idea how to build a game engine, but they know how to drag and drop and create a storyline. There you go. We have even more game developers than before because we have gaming engines. So that's the way I would think about it. It can sound scary on the surface, but typically when we get to this point, we end up democratizing the Lego bricks so people can focus on building things versus assembling low-level details.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Pete, unmute yourself, introduce yourself, make a statement, ask your question. You there, Pete? We're counting on you, Pete. All right, Pete, timeout, exception, 500 error, have to move you off. We're gonna go to the next person. Let's see what we have. I think it's going to be Switchboard, I think it is, or Lucas. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Hi, Kelsey. My name's Lucas. First off, congratulations on
Yourself, ask your question.
Hi, Kelsey. My name's Lucas. First off, congratulations on the promotion. And before I ask my question, I just want to say, when I was first getting my start in containers and Kubernetes, I came and saw you speak at KubeCon, and that was really like an inflection point kind of in my career. I just wrapped up QCon 2022 in Detroit. Fly home tomorrow. And speaking of inflection points, now I find myself in a position as a senior engineer. And I'm in a little bit of tension because I still want to perform as an individual contributor, but I see the need not only for the organization that I'm in, but also for my own career to kind of zoom out and have a little more impact in terms of strategy, driving change, both technically and organizationally. I'm not really sure that I'm up to it, or I'm having some difficulty doing that. So I'm just wondering if you can offer any advice for someone, in that position who needs to step up to that next level.
Yeah, I remember the time I learned that I had to stop wearing the cape. Early in my career, I used to pride myself on being the go-to person. Like every company, every team, you got the go-to person. Something's down, you call that person first. There's an outage. Even when this person isn't on call, you call them anyway. They're the go-to person. And for a while, I used to like it, to be honest. It was unhealthy as hell, but I ain't gonna even lie. I used to like being the go-to person. You walk in the war room with your cape on, like, yo, I am here. Pull up the logs. Keep up to find the same problem that we did for 2,000 times in a row. And eventually I was like, this ain't cool. How many times am I going to be the go-to person? And I remember a manager kind of sat me down. It's like, yo, you cannot keep being the go-to person. The moment you can make another go-to person, that's how you know you went to the next level. At least that's the challenge that they gave me. And so what I did was like, yo, how would I accelerate someone else being able to do it? How can I actually get things done and not have to be there? Of course, write some documentation, but I learned that the very next time I need to pull people along with me. So if I'm going to solve a problem, I'll say, yo, that outage that's going on right now, remember you told me you was ready to learn? Come through. And I would sit side by side. I was like, I'm going to need you to drive. I'm going to be right here, though. Hey, look here, look there. And they would have the paper and pencil, and they would just write some notes. Hold on, you're going too fast. Like, yeah, let me slow down. But look, the bridge is open, and everybody asking questions on when we're going to be ready, so we're going to have to move at a healthy clip. And so that person would do the work. And then one thing I had to learn, how to share the credit. It can't just be me fixing the outage all the time. I got really good at it. And look, when you're real confident in yourself, it becomes real easy to say, hey, that was all Bob, that was all Jane. They did it all themselves. Like, nah, you was there with me. I was like, hey, man, stop messing up your compliment. I'm trying to let you shine because you did the work. I get that you knew, but at this point, you've been trained. You got some of the fundamentals. And then I kind of realized that that type of work is important too. And one thing I also realized that you don't have to do it forever. If your company understands, and I've done this a few times, I said, listen, I don't think I want to be a manager. I don't think that's where I want my career to go. So here's the deal. I need to be able to do this in a way that I can transition back out when the time comes. So let's set a date on this. Let's say this. Let's do this for 6 months, and let's communicate that for the next 6 months, we're going to lead the team, or I'm going to lead the team, and we're going to reevaluate. And remember, the evaluation or the success criteria isn't the fact that you still want me to do this. It's the fact that I may not want to do this, even if I did a good job. And I think that gives you enough room to take a little of the pressure off because you know that there's an out. And that could mean a couple of things. That could mean that you give it your all and then see and settle up later. It also establishes a good feedback loop and check-in to say, hey, how's it going? Are you really feeling this? Maybe you can have some periodic check-ins in between. And then you might decide, yo, that was fun. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad the team liked me as their manager. But I gotta be honest. I just don't like doing expense reports. I don't really like that part of it.
And if management is going to be part of that, then that's not what I want to do. And maybe a team lead is right, where you say, hey, I like some of the leadership aspects. I like some of the responsibility explicitly to be the mentor. And maybe you go down that route. So I would probably recommend that, like just find a situation where you can make a pivot. At Google, I used to pivot about every 6 months. I would go and say, oh, Istio is out. Let me go and do some work around Istio and learn some new things about networking and service mesh and educate myself, work with the PMs who are more knowledgeable than I am. And that would be my pivot, but I can always go right back or I can keep it going. And so that's been the way I've approached this in particular. And then honestly, once you start to get that knack for leadership in the style that you prefer, sometimes it's as a manager, but sometimes it's just as that person who is willing to proactively reach out, mentor other people, jump in, do those code reviews, be very patient with the code review because you really try to make someone better and not just nitpicking people over the style guide. If that's really who you are, then you're going to find a way to do leadership regardless of how HR describes it. That's just been my approach.
Thanks, Kelsey, for answering the question and for continuing to make yourself so available to so many people.
All right, I'm taking 2 more because I was supposed to be on this thing for 30 minutes. We had 3 hours. So we're going to do 2 more and we're going to wrap it up. And so with the next to last question, I'm going to bring the speaker to the stage. I think it's Gandahar. If you could, unmute yourself, introduce yourself, ask your question. Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, Kelsey, can you hear me?
I can hear you 100%. Ask your question.
Hey, Kelsey, thank you so much for giving me the chance. So I want to ask 2 things. One is like, how do you not let your emotions come into your work zone? Like, how do you maintain the flow statement when you are like emotionally bogged down or you have something that's emotionally bothering you? And the other thing is like, how do you stay relevant and make your future proof in this rapidly changing environment? Like, I mean, from a junior engineer's perspective, I'm asking, like, I'm kind of pre-senior. So from that level, I'm asking, because I find currently in my current role, there's a lot of stakeholder management talking to other teams and stuff, but there is very little code that we write. So I feel like I'm kind of lagging behind and I feel really intimidated by the rapidly changing environments. Like if I get to see the code that's being written on Kubernetes, if I am not writing that level of code right now, then I feel like I'm not heading in the right direction. So how do I handle that intimidation and that feeling?
Yeah, all right, let's just dive into it. So let's start with the emotional question. I'm going to be honest, I don't really take the emotion part out. I need that. I need the emotion part. I'm not a robot. You know what I mean? I'm an actual human being. So a couple of things, like if know it's going to be a contentious meeting, then I need to get my mind right because I'm going to be emotional. It's what I'm going to do with the emotion that, I've kind of learned how to deal with. Like to this day, when I get on stage, I am nervous as hell. I'm like, oh my God, especially when people be like, hey, I drove all the way here from Canada to see you speak. Oh man, it's gonna be dope. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, no pressure? That's too much. I just want to give my talk. I didn't want to meet this new expectation. So that emotional piece, I embrace that part. So I'm nervous. And then what I try to do is just like hold it for a moment. I take a pause. When I'm writing code and something delights me, something upsets me, I try not to get too upset because honestly, we sit in front of a keyboard, usually in air conditioning. There are worse situations to be in. But sometimes I will express frustration, ideally through a solution. But let's just say I'm delighted, right? Because that's emotion. I want to listen to my body tell me that something is going right. There's a lot of bad stuff in the world. So when something goes right, damn if I'm going to miss it. And so I'm at my desk and something goes right. Like the other day, I started using an IDE instead of Vim. And I'm downloading the IDE. It's written in Java, so that took 7 years. But I got it on my laptop. And I was like, okay, I got 64 gigs of RAM, so we're not gonna have no memory issues. And let me just try it. It's Golang. And I'm writing code. I actually opened up some code from before. And I was writing some REST API thing. And the way I write REST APIs, I call curl, I get back a response, I take the JSON body, because usually I'm having to roll my own client because there's no library. And I remember I posted the JSON body in the IDE next to some other code block because I just wanted to see it. And so I can actually just write, a type to go with it. And the IDE said, hey, this looks like JSON. Would you like me to generate a type for you? I was really happy in that moment because I was actually paying attention to the emotional component. So I go to Twitter, I took a screenshot, and I was like, what a fantastic feature. Here's what I was doing. Here's why I was delighted. So I tweeted and I, sent it to people with the screenshot. And in my mind, I know what's going to happen. There's a person who was thinking just like you who implemented that feature. How do they keep themselves motivated? They're a senior engineer, they've implemented that feature. Maybe no one told them whether they used the feature or not. And they got the same situation. They don't even know how to feel, and maybe they haven't felt anything in a long time. They're gonna see that tweet, hopefully, or maybe their manager sees that tweet, and someone goes to their Slack channel and says, yo, look at this positive feedback about that thing you worked on. And then they get to feel some type of joy too. So it's the fact that I'm keeping the emotion in my job and using it to tell someone thank you, decide that I should make a change, be honest, be transparent. And so I think having emotion is important. So if you're an engineer, hopefully that's a good example. But if you're a manager, you need to have some emotion too. If you hear some devil speak from the corporate side and it makes you feel a certain way, then maybe you don't pass that down to the team, because if you pay attention to your own emotional intelligence, you'll realize they probably will respond the same way. So we're people first. And so I think that is a super important part. Now, the times that I do keep my emotion in check, I see something that obviously isn't finished yet. I could be an asshole. I could say, oh, these people don't know what the hell they're doing. Let me show them. That's unnecessary. So that's the part where I have to have a little bit of discipline and respect. I know how hard this work is. I know we don't always get all the time in the world to complete tasks. I know what it feels like when I'm rushed to do something and then someone tells me it wasn't done right, and then they don't want to hear the fact that I had only 2 days to do it and it should have been 2 weeks. I know how that feels emotionally. That's why, again, it's so important to pay attention to your emotions. So now you're on the other side. You're about to judge someone on their project, and if you remember your last emotional response, maybe, just maybe, you'll approach them with the same empathy that you wish someone else would have done when you had that last experience. So I think you gotta keep the emotions in the work, but you gotta make sure you understand the emotions. You gotta understand that there's multiple ways to deal with an emotion, and sometimes you gotta be patient and take one step back. The last one you asked, and I'm gonna end on this one, how to remain relevant. I think the important part is relevant to who is very important, because there is so many people in this world, so many communities where you're always going to be relevant in some regard. We talked a lot about family during the session. More than likely, you're relevant to your family. You're relevant to your kids. You're relevant to your partner. You're relevant to your spouse. You're relevant to somebody. So don't let the job dictate whether you're relevant or not. I ignore a bunch of technologies because guess what? Those technologies are irrelevant to me. And it's okay. I don't need to learn everything. But if I'm going to claim to be a certain professional, if I'm going to say things like I'm a web designer, then I probably want to pay attention to what's going on in web design. Now, I take that attention part and you say relevant. How do you stay relevant? How do you stay relevant? And so to me, relevant is what can I contribute to a team, to my family, to various things? Because I think that ability to contribute, that's how people judge your relevancies. For example, let's say the only programming language you know is from the 80s. For a lot of companies that don't use that programming language, you are irrelevant to them. That's okay. But boy, when COVID hit and they needed somebody that understood a programming language from the 80s and they was willing to pay 10 times more than any other developers getting paid, oh boy, did your relevancy go through the roof. And in fact, Joe was talking about the comp. Yesterday's price ain't today's price. So relevancy is straight up situational. It's all about the situation. So typically, if you're smart, if you're paying attention to the landscape, you feel to just put yourself in position to be relevant in the way you want to be relevant. Just because you're not relevant in a situation you don't care about, that's not the ultimate desire. I remember I went on my first 2-month vacation after almost 20 years. I'm ashamed of it. But I finally did it. Now, I've learned to take little 1-week vacations here and there. When I talk to my European brothers and sisters, they be like, yo, 1 week, they be laughing at me. I'm like, why are you laughing at me? I said I took a 2-week vacation. I didn't expect you to bust out in laughter. And the European folks be like, nah, bro, that's not vacation. That's like a weekend. And so they taught me about like a real, what do they say, proper vacation. And so I took a 2-month vacation this year for the first, like a real vacation. I'm gonna explain to you a real vacation. A real vacation is when you start telling people ahead of time, I'm not gonna be here. You can't call me. I'm not gonna answer if you do. I'm just letting y'all know now. They be like, when you taking vacation? Oh, I'm taking the vacation 2 months from now. I'm just letting y'all know that I'm not gonna be here. Don't call me. Don't email me. A couple of days before I took that vacation, I sent an email to everybody. Just reminding y'all one more time, I'm not gonna be here. And my email signature said, when I come back on this date, 2 months from now, I will not be checking email. I will not be catching up on email. I will be select star and deleting all the email. It's on you to start over. And I was feeling real good about myself. I closed the work laptop, I put it underneath my bed, and that was the last time I checked it for the whole 2 months. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I woke up the next day like, hey man, what if they don't need me no more? What if all the impact I was making, somebody figure out how to make the same impact without me around? That might be a problem. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought. If anybody else can just pick it up and run with it. Look, even though I think that should be the goal, to make sure that the team can survive without you, but damn, I want to be relevant. And so I actually tweeted that, like, I am actually legitimately worried about being irrelevant when I come back in 2 months. And the truth is, now that I've lived through it, you're not going to be irrelevant. You actually might come back to a different job, but your skills, if you choose to maintain them in the direction in which you want, and you let people know the areas in which you want to work, you'll always be relevant. And to the one more point that you raised around things changing so fast, I'm honest with you, they don't. The noise, the people making the noise, that changes pretty fast. A lot of the startups don't live very long, so you do see a lot of turnover. But the fundamentals are roughly the same. I started my career out of high school in 1999, let's call it the year 2000. It's 2022. Let me guess, people are still writing code, largely in text, creating a build. Whether they're using Kubernetes or by hand, they're copying it to a server. The app comes out, it probably really doesn't work. There will be a bug, someone will jump in to fix it. It's going to log stuff that doesn't matter. People on the team will learn to ignore those logs, the real logs. The team one day will actually get centralized login for real this time, but they still haven't. They're going to go to a conference and someone's going to say that they're doing it all wrong. Then the next day, they're going to go to a different session and someone's going to say, that guy knows nothing what he's talking about. We should do it this way. And at the end of the day, we're still doing fundamentally the same thing. Data comes in, it gets transformed, the data comes back out. You can put it in a database and run a query and put it on a graph or a spreadsheet, or you can use that data to train an ML model to guess whether a cat is a dog. All right, that's the end of this. Hopefully people learned a lot. I appreciate all the warm wishes. I love the fact that I've reached this level. I love the stories about inspiring other people. And I'm glad today that I decided to share a little bit of my success, because honestly, this is a team win. And look, I appreciate you all hanging out with me. And look, don't be afraid to share y'all success too, because you have no idea who you're going to inspire, including me. I'm out.
Thanks, Kelsey. Take care, man.
Righty, that was cool. Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. All right, so we wrapped up listening to Kelsey Hightower. So what we're gonna do next? We're gonna write a Friday report. It's about time. We didn't implement anything on the editing front, but exciting. Pretty excited about it. Filled with some editors. Let's see, big editor. All right, so this is mostly it. Yeah, so join this. Maybe it's not what I want. Better way to ask. Come on. Yeah. So. Okay. Let's see from another browser. Okay. Private browser. Jeez. What the hell? What happens if I do this? Fuck. That happened a little too fast. Okay, never mind. Not doing this. We're not doing this. We're basically checking the pipeline. How good are we? Vercel built. This is done. We are going to ship this. Expand all. Nah, that's not what I want, actually. This is what I want. Let's see how broken, how ugly, how painful. So that works. That works. I can live with that. I can live with that. I can live with this. I can live with all of that. Yeah. Okay, Tijan is going to cover the rest. Where would I be without Tijan, huh? All right, and then this one, drag, yep. So we do it there, we close it, we fold it out, it still works. Bring it back in, close it, fold it out, still works. Perfect. So what we're doing now, back there, it's merging this, huh? Merge. Let's go. Merchant pipeline succeeds. This was 124, right? Actually, don't do that. Yeah, I don't need these to succeed. Darn it, approval is optional. How do I force? Come on, you know what? Let's just put some violence here. FTC. So that one. Where's hack? Hack is over there. So that one. Origin. Actually fetch origin. So good. Go merge. Fast forward. Go. Yep. And fast forward. Add merge branch. Add up. And we push it. Now, this is going to be pretty violent. It got pushed, so it will know this is sorted. This is sorted. So we have 124. We can wrap up everything that belongs to this integrate section component. Let's just write that up. Post with merge request, and we're going to let's see, make first. Yeah, we're gonna park this before after. Park this as I believe that working. Right. Closing. Yeah, closing. I believe settled. Right. Bam. Comment and close merge request. Beep, 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 beep. Now, what do we have? What do we still have left? Okay, that is something I want to look at, but later. Later, my friend. What we are going to do right now, this one. I'm going to find myself no, local. So check out local branch main. Oh, it's been a while. 3 days ago. So what did we get? Storybook related stuff, fixing link and color canceled. Because UI fixes, kill unused components, just some cleanup work, resizable TOC. Oh, so what if we do fast forward merge? And let's do it. And we push. Finished. This is going to be deployed. I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, so let's just continue the write-up for this week. Information tools, building a knowledge and progress management tool for devs. Use plain text to get API, Slack, and web to interface and get things done. To collab. That's nicer. That's a better line. So every week this line gets a little bit better. But let's get to twitter.com formation tool, tools. There we go. So what do we have? Building a knowledge management, blah, blah, blah. Please take 2 minutes, share up, tweet. And here we go. And what can I still add to it? Actually, let's have a look. Yeah, we still want to collect answers. We can, it's a CTA. Yeah, it's a good CTA. We can put in there. Right. That. Now, what I really need to figure out is That's how I'll manage to log in. Fair enough. Fair enough. That I'll need to switch my mail view. Let me go there. Actually, search type form. I have to do that on a separate screen because there's all this sensitive information listed. Up. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? So, fair enough. Okay, cool. So let's try to log into our Google account, our work Google account. So if I say log in on Google, do you figure that out? Sweet. Looks like we're in. 17 responses. All right. So we can use more. So that's for that one. And then of course we'll switch Emacs back to the prod view. I can move that back into screen. Bam. And what's new? We do that. Back to this. Paste that. And of course, we probably want to copy these and do this tweet here. Bam. Still works. Building public Friday report. What's new information? Till sorted a few tooling issues. Improve workflow. Like, yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. Figure that out. This is it. Yeah. We did differently. We're dog fooding at. Okay, so that's probably not going to do the dog fooding thing. We're just doing this. Here, folding. What's the information tools? Take 2 minutes and share how your tech work collabs. Yeah, fair enough. But we probably want to take this line. We're dog food, and we kind of have to. Scrappy app. Scrappy, not too crappy, but definitely far from perfect. For dog fooding it is, building public. The other tagline I had was end Friday report. I can put that in there. Friday report. Bam. Okay. For dog fooding at. Okay. Google 12 building knowledge and progress management tool for devs. Here's my different blah. Information tools. Folding of sections. More UX tweaks. Yeah, okay, cool. I can do that. I can do it. I can try to find the tweet initiating my live stream and drop it in there. Probably not the wisest call, but hey. Well, whatevs. That's kind of cool. Bina. Bina streaming work code. Yeah, how do I phrase this? I probably just put the link in there, and then I put again in public, and that's just built in public. Probably Venus streaming. Easy to catch streams. This week's wrap streamed. Twitch, etc. Let's call this live streams. progress. So sorry for what stream say. Not televised. Televised is probably not the right way to phrase it. Probably sensitive. It's not a revolution. It's probably revolutionary in a way, but in a smaller way than most people would think. It's pretty humble folding of sections. Now the Twitter icons are not very clear. I should probably do folded hands, folding of sections. Maybe I should use a door, actually. Clear language. Or add sections. Yep, there we go. Resizable panes, more UX tweaks. Played. Wow, I am struggling with English with more WYSIWYG editor alerts. Prep work. I would call it prep. Yeah, it's actually prep work. And how do you say, follow Vidbina to catch weekly live streams. Live streams on progress. This week's wrap up was captured. We'll try to stream Summit. But I don't think so far now. Try to stream Web Summit. Tweet all. Friday report going out. Building knowledge and progress management tools for devs. Oh my goodness! So I started late today because there was like a social call. Had to visit a friend. Really wanted to before we skipped town. Has a freshly born new human. It was just amazing to watch them. So yeah, that was totally worth it. But it did mean that I started this very late, and lo and behold, it's 1 o'clock. Ready to wrap this up, and I'm just going to nicely quote wrapping up this week's. I can do this part in public actually. Wrapping up this week's Friday report while listening to Kelsey Hightower take questions as we all celebrated. Just the overall tech community and overall geez community good night and star I'm not starstruck is probably the wrong way to put it, but it's a nice emoji. I like the colors. I'm like, it looks adorbs. It looks adorbs. How do I deal with this? Listen to Kelsey Hightower wrapping up some code. Do I just click this? Does this then become okay? So I could probably link probably just take this link. People can follow this tweet, probably easier because I don't know how the rest. So Facebook there. Am I getting hearts? Well, I got some hearts. People are nice. People are lovely. Lovely. Coolio. Bam. I don't know what that does. Well, let's see. Maybe it should just drop. That's a cool point. Let me actually open the link. Let's see what it looks like. What was that? What was that? All right, cool. That's dope. That's dope. I didn't really comment the live stream, or not the live stream. I don't know what is it called, like a clubhouse. whatever Twitter's name for Clubhouse is. It was a lovely stream. Well, probably not called stream again. There we go. Just loved it. That's all I know. Can't find something. So let's see. This Twitter stuff, I'm pretty strong with it sometimes. Here we go. There we go. Wrapping it up full circle. And here we go. Bam, 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 bam. Take questions there, and then that's funny. So I can say, oh, that wasn't it. I'm gonna do that. Okay, cool. Take questions. The overall tech community. We can do partying phase. Partying phase. All right, folks. Well, listening to some take questions. While streaming, that's what we did there. While streaming, camera. I probably should paste the link first. Streaming, and then we have camera icon. Come on, people. Yeah, so, and listening to Kelsey House, I would take questions. This is so really for human in the overall tech community. All right, folks. So I'm wrapping this up. So let's do a final walkthrough. Maybe I shouldn't tag Kelsey Hightower. Maybe I shouldn't do that. It's just not fair. Not fair to the gentleman. Maybe. It's my fault. I'm doing this, but someone said I have to be shameless, so I'm shameless. I often try to be nice and considerate, but hey, time for that is over. I could have done built in public. So yeah, what do we have this week? This week we took our little scrappy app from whatever it was last week to what? Draggable TOCs. Of course, you should probably look at it in light mode. This is what it typically looks like. Next week, we're probably going to change some of the coloring to make the TOC a little less in your face. And then we're going to take care of some of these carrots because you can kind of like fold sections. And honestly, typography is a big problem here. We're going to have to address these things next week. But now, this is kind of like the whole document. You can kind of like see this section can be folded open and all the children can be folded open or closed. I should probably figure out how to implement some form of a mapping between what we're doing here and what you're seeing here. But we can only do so much every day, baby steps. I'm going to call it a wrap. It's 1:13. It's Friday out here. Y'all have a lovely weekend. I may stream. Jacob is here from Twitch. Going well. How you doing? Good seeing you here. And we got some folks again on YouTube that we can block. Girls18.online. Yeah, we're not looking for that. So we can probably block that. Boom. Girls18.online is blocked. So yeah, Jacob from Land, if you're interested in collaboration tooling and you're in a team that builds some tech or not even tech, you use wikis. We're kind of like building this prototype tool for us to collaborate with where we can write text. Currently, we do it inside of Emacs. I'm not trying to get anyone to learn Emacs, but we're slowly but surely trying to build something that allows you to use plain text underneath, but you have all of this beautiful jazz up top. And that should allow folks to just do cool stuff without thinking too much about the tooling and not having to think about migration or thinking about what happens if a platform is down. Can I get access to my data? It's always your data. We don't even own it. It could be in a Git repo. We just make sure that you can just interact with it in a nicer way for juniors, business people, but also engineers. It's a win-win-win for everyone, huh? So yeah, that's it. This week, I'm kind of like happy that we have this thing now where I can decide like, oh, maybe I want to see this in long form or wide form so I can actually read what's in here. But sometimes I'll just want it to be away, or sometimes I just want it to be gone altogether, have like focus mode to pay attention to. And then I have, of course, this beautiful stuff that I can fold away at my heart, to my heart's desire. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna call it. Was good hanging with y'all. Let me see if I can actually type. Hey, Jacob from Land. Thanks for joining. Doing well. Just wrapped up some code cutting, and I should do this in public. I'm happy to see more folks showing up to the stream time to time. Yeah. All right. That's it. Showtime's over. Ciao.